The Prismatic Draft League playoffs have arrived, and by the time the regular season is over and we get to the playoffs, there are no standings to look at, there are no trades to cover, there is a bracket, I'll show the bracket, but there's not a whole lot of preamble worth doing, and there are 14 teams fighting it out over 4 rounds, chasing that championship. One thing I do like to do before we jump in is a quick refresh on all of the teams that have gotten this far, giving each of them their due just for a moment before they quickly start to be mostly eliminated. So let's go through the teams. In the number 1 seed, we have the Ontario Ogres, a team that has been very difficult to stop throughout the season, of course. That's why they're in first place. They have the legendary trio of Landorus, Tornadus, and Thunderous, with 2 of those in their Therian forms, you can see in the image. And those 3 plus Mega Gardevoir have been sort of the main story to follow for this team, especially the complementary offensive coverage of Mega Gardevoir and Therian Landorus. One a very strong special attacker, the other a very strong physical attacker, and as I've pointed out many times, Landorus's ground stab covers everything that resists Gardevoir's fairy stab, and they both have powerful spread damage of those respective types. Plus, this team has a bunch of ground immunities as well to pair with Landorus. I talked up the telepathy Gardevoir before it Mega Evolves, but Gardevoir wants to Mega Evolve pretty much always, so that hasn't really been a factor this season. But they can put Landorus next to Tornadus, Thunderous, or even Mischievous, and spam Earthquake with no trouble. We've also seen the Bisharp put in work. We've seen Blaziken and Jellicent at times. We haven't seen Roserade. It was a very late pickup, the very last roster change of any team this season. But we'll see if it does something in the playoffs. And this is also, I think, the team that sort of pioneered Skydrop. It's not the only team that's been using Skydrop throughout the season, but a move that was not on my radar at all during the draft has had its power shown off pretty effectively by the Ogres, being able, of course, to basically remove an opposing Pokemon from the field for a turn with a whole bunch of weird mechanical interactions that go along with that. As usual, I featured a Pokemon in the bottom left corner. Going into the season, I put something that I'm looking forward to seeing. It actually was Mega Sharpedo for this team, and then they dropped that without ever bringing it to a match. But I had to go with Miguel the Landorus as a Pokemon that has stood out to me throughout the season because W Miguel. Number 2, we have the East Coast Esper. This team has been an absolute menace throughout the season. They were in my own pool, but I didn't play them, and I guess I'm better off for it. At least my win-loss record is. This is the team that took Mega Salamence, one of the 2 most expensive Pokemon on the draft board. I think Mega Kangaskhan was the most expensive, and then Mega Salamence second. So the Esper sent quite a bit of their budget into that, but they haven't even relied very heavily on Salamence throughout the season. Instead, they've had a bunch of well-balanced game plans. In fact, they haven't relied all that much on Mega Evolution at all. They picked up Mega Lucario later and haven't even really made a whole lot of use of that. What they have done is offensive game plans featuring Pokemon like Swampert and Charizard, supported by Pokemon like Thundurus and Clefairy, as well as Florges as a fairy-type attacker, and a bulky option to mix in with the Ferrothorn. We've seen the Salamence put in work here and there as well, but this team has been super scary in part because it has great supports that can make the attackers really shine, but also in part because they have so many different attackers and any one of them could pop off any given week. And I haven't tried to build for this team because I haven't played them, but and I won't play them unless we both get to the final, but I imagine it's very difficult to prepare for because they have that variety of threats to throw at you with some very powerful support Pokemon mixed in. And we've seen the Clefairy take a lot of KOs too, so even the support Pokemon can be offensive threats. To pick just one Pokemon to feature in the bottom left, the Swampert, I think, has led this team in KOs. I think I saw the coach say that in the Discord the other day, and I didn't fact check them. I believe it. Swampert has definitely looked a lot more threatening throughout the season than I would ever have expected. And once again, this team is pretty good at spamming Earthquake because it has a bunch of ground immunities to put on the field next to Swampert. At number 3, we have Bois. Bois. However you want to say it, the winner of the Metronome battle. Therefore, they get the 3 seed. This is an interesting team because, honestly, I'd kind of forgotten they had Mega Latios. We have seen the Mega Latios sometimes this season, but in recent weeks, it's much more often been a Trick Room mode with Trevenant, Escavalier, sometimes Rhyperior, Arcanine being a bulky threat, and then Greninja being very disruptive, fast, with a wide move pool, able to run a lot of powerful coverage into opposing teams and complement the Trick Room mode surprisingly well. And then we've also seen Ditto Chaos here and there. That's a lot of how this team has played in recent weeks. I've kind of forgotten some of the other things they could do before I was putting this image together. It really feels like we haven't seen all that much of the Mega Latios, but this team just keeps winning anyway. They took one loss in week 1 and then one out ever since. But the Greninja has especially been a dynamic threat that's hard for opponents to deal with, which is why it gets the featured Pokemon spot here. This is my team. Then we have the Sinister Hand, the number 5 seed. One spot below me, the only head-to-head loss that I took in the regular season, but their win-loss record was just slightly worse in the end. This team is super difficult to prepare for. I do know that one firsthand because I tried to do it at one point and it didn't go very well. They have the Sand duo of Mega Tyranitar and Stoutland. They also have a whole other powerful Mega in Mega Mawile. The Suicune has been honestly the MVP for this team, I think, throughout the season because it's just very tanky and hard to bring down while also having that powerful water typing, able to set up with Calm Mind or just spam Scald or something and break through some threats. They have powerful support Pokemon as well. Dusclops is a good bulky Trick Room setter. Clefable gives them redirection or some more offensive options than Clefairy would. The Chandelure gives them a very powerful special attacker to pair with something like Mega Mawile or Suicune and cover those Pokemon's weaknesses. They have Proto Incineroar in the Scrafty with that Fake Out and Intimidate and whatnot. Overall, just a really difficult team to break through because they have a bunch of bulky threats, but they also have plenty of powerful offense to throw at you. And when I played them in the regular season, I kind of slept on the Regigigas, and then even that was a huge problem for me. So every Pokemon on this team is some kind of threat, and they complement each other super well. Next, we have Genie Incarnate, so I guess this is the number 6 seed now. This is another team that has a lot of different modes that it can throw at opponents that have been fun to watch throughout the season. There's obviously Tailwind stuff with like Noivern and Crocodile. Crocodile able to spam Earthquake next to Noivern and either intimidate the opposing team or boost with Moxie if it gets an opening to sweep. And they have other Pokemon that can play well in Tailwind as well, like Volcarona we've seen as an offensive threat. Mega Gengar obviously is a huge offensive threat, capable of trapping opponents as well. We have Manchow for fast Fake Out or fighting type offense, some other support options. They have a Trick Room mode with Bronzong and Mega Camerupt. This is the other Mega Camerupt team, of course, in the draft, the one from the other pool. They have a bulky Grass in Tangrowth, which can complement the Camerupt. I guess their water type is Dugong, but they have been bringing Dugong in recent weeks. It can play a Perish Trap game with Gengar, but we've seen more like offensive Assault Vest Dugong, putting that Ice typing to good use offensively, which has been very helpful to them. And then Pikachu Bell has not been showing up super often this season, but opponents have definitely been caught off guard sometimes by a Pikachu that gets Icicle Crash. So a lot of offensive threats here and a number of different ways they can play, and some tanky Pokemon to support them as well. Pretty solid team. Love to see Mega Gengar doing well. And then we have the Elegancy. This team is interesting because it changed its look fairly recently. It has the duo of Amoonguss and Heatran. In both pools, Amoonguss and Heatran were drafted together, and they're a pretty difficult core to break, especially when they have complementary pieces around them like Slowbro and Heat Rotom. Rotom, of course, able to come in on that ground-type damage that is very threatening to Heatran and not resisted by Amoonguss, even though Amoonguss is a grass type. Of course, it's also a poison type. So that Levitate ability, actually, those three were drafted together in both pools. The Levitate ability really coming in handy there. And then adding Slowbro as a bulky water, they did this recently, so it's kind of untested, but in theory it makes this team a lot more difficult for opponents to power through, especially with Slowbro and Amoonguss both being able to run Regenerator. And you could then worry that this team has a certain lack of damage, but, I mean, Mega Mawile is one of the most powerful attackers in the game. Sigilyph looked incredible last week. Dragalge is pretty strong as a dragon type with good coverage and some good stats. So they have offense, they have bulk to play a much more balancey game plan, and they have speed control options with the Dusclops setting Trick Room and the Murkrow. I think Murkrow gets Tailwind, Sigilyph certainly does, so they have Tailwind options somewhere in here. Trick Room also noteworthy because Amoonguss, of course, is extremely slow, so it could be a menace in Trick Room. Slowbro is extremely slow. Heatran is fairly slow for such a powerful Pokemon, and so is Dragalge, and so is Mega Mawile. So yeah, they have a lot of Pokemon available for a Trick Room mode before I even mentioned the Trapinch, which is extremely slow and able to trap opponents if they're grounded. But then having the Tailwind option as well makes this team more flexible. Next we have the Ryan Green Blue Porygon 2s. This team started as more of an overt Hail team than it is now. But Pokemon like Glaceon and Aurorus were really not working out for this team, and Mega Abomasnow really was working out extremely well for this team. Mega Abomasnow has throughout the season been kind of a one Pokemon Hail mode, able to just set up the hail itself, and then benefit and spam that blizzard and grab a lot of KOs. So even though it looks less like an obvious hail team now than it used to, the Abomasnow alone makes that mode a giant threat. But they've also now complemented it with the Mega Garchomp, which has been going crazy in the late weeks of the regular season since they picked it up. Once again, able to click Earthquake next to a few of its partners, as Togekiss is a flying type, and Rotom and Bronzong both get Levitate. Plus, Aegislash and Mienshao get Wide Guard, so they can protect themselves from the Earthquake in a pinch. So we've seen Mega Garchomp absolutely sweeping the last couple weeks. We've seen Mega Abomasnow go crazy throughout the season. Both those Pokemon are able to throw off huge spread damage, one physical, one special. They complement each other in that way. And then otherwise, it's just a good mix of strong Pokemon. They have Trick Room options with the Bronzong and slow threats like Aegislash and Jellicent. Even Mega Garchomp is relatively slow for a Mega, right? Yeah, we've seen Jellicent often brought with an offensive set, throwing off water spouts, so again, big spread damage, but they can also pivot around, position carefully with Pokemon like Mienshao and Aegislash and Bronzong that are all hard to bring down. They have redirection from Togekiss. Rotom's kind of bulky too. They have redirection from Togekiss and also Spinarak if they want, although I think Spinarak is kind of roster filler once they consolidated their points. They can play tricks with Zorua. I don't know if we'll see that in the playoffs, but it'd be fun if we do. And of course, the last thing I have to mention for this team is they've gotten into the habit of setting Gravity with the Bronzong, which has the effect, of course, of boosting move accuracy across the board and also making ungrounded Pokemon become grounded, which, one, means that Bronzong is able to spam Hypnosis into opponents and connect pretty often and incapacitate them in that way. Two, Abomasnow is an easier time hitting its blizzards outside of hail, which is not always going to be up. 3, Abomasnow we've also seen run Grass Whistle, which is, I believe, a move with the same accuracy as Sing. So less accurate than Hypnosis and puts opponents to sleep, but it's landing its Grass Whistles when gravity is up. And 3, they do take away their own ground immunities by setting Gravity, but they can cover for that with Protect and Wide Guard. And Mega Garchomp doesn't have to worry about things being immune to its Earthquake if Gravity is up. Even the flying types will take damage, so the Gravity strats have been a lot of fun to watch. Next we have the Book Club. This team kind of surprised me with its choice of 2 Megas, both physical fighting types in Lopunny and Gallade, but we've seen both of them pop off at times throughout the season. Overall, this is just a really strong physically offensive team. That's largely true. They do have a lot of physical attackers. Not only their 2 Megas, but also Crawdaunt, which hits extremely hard with adaptability boosted stab attacks. We've seen Dugtrio put in work, able to trap opponents on the field and hit harder than something like a Diglett. Scizor is another strong physical attacker. I don't know if we've seen it do as much throughout the season, but I think the MVP for this team really has been the Zapdos. Zapdos has shown why it was such a menace in early generations before power creep went off the rails, because it just is tanky enough to stick around for a while, but it also hits very hard with moves like Thunder, Thunderbolt, whatever kind of hidden power they want. It's been a great complement to the physical offense spam that they have available. They also have kind of a sneaky rain mode with Tornadus able to set up rain so that Zapdos can land an accurate Thunder, and also Crawdaunt gets a boost on its water type damage. We've seen Zapdos take a lot of KOs in that kind of game plan. Tornadus also, by the way, able to hit reasonably hard with Hurricane, and they have the Skydrop tech available to them. But obviously, Arcanine's a good tanky Pokemon as well, but yeah, a lot of offensive threats here in a Tailwind game plan with the Rain Dance as an option, but a number of other ways they can play, and of course, Mega Lopunny even able to fake out Ghost types with that scrappy ability. Next, we have Pendragon United. This team, so this is the other Mega Salamence team, but once again, I feel like Mega Salamence, for how expensive it was in the draft, has not really been doing a ton for either of the teams that drafted it, but it's still very good to have, right? It gets Intimidate, it hits extremely hard, sometimes it does show up and just take a KO. Maybe it feels like it's not doing very much because it does its work so quickly. It just clicks double edge into something and that thing is gone. But this team, I think, has leaned more on other Pokemon, notably Entei and Mamoswine, and Mega Gallade, and Aegislash. Those 4 have all been showing up as offensive threats in recent weeks, able to run a variety of sets, hit extremely hard as long as the Mamoswine is connecting on its Icicle Crashes. It can get a lot of quick KOs, so can Entei with something like Specs Eruption or a more standard physical set. Aegislash is able to sit on the field for a while, play a tankier game, especially with cover from something like Clefairy. They have Yamask available to set Trick Room, I guess, if they want. And actually, this team's been loading up on support Pokemon late in the season, because Clefairy, come to think of it, was a late season trade. They actually didn't have it most of the way. But they got rid of Togekiss, a Pokemon that is very good, but they weren't, I think, getting the greatest use out of. And stacked up a couple of support options with Clefairy, which gives them that redirection with Friend Guard and whatnot, and also Scraggy, which is, of course, Baby Scrafty, able to run an Eviolite and with the same Intimidate and Fake Out. So all of that can enable a bulky game plan with Aegislash, or I could see Salamence just throwing off Hyper Voices or Double Edges or setting up with Dragon Dance. It opens up some flexible options for them with Gallade. And they still have Entei, able to bring a variety of sets and hit hard. They have Mamoswine, able to hit hard as long as it lands those Icicle Crashes. And that said, I've gone with 2 Pokemon in the bottom left this time because it's hard to separate the duo of Minun and Clang. I feel like Minun's had a little bit more of a storyline throughout the season because it was matched up against Plusle in one of the early weeks. And we've seen it put in a lot of work in other weeks as well. But Clang and Minun, of course, get plus and minus. So they're able to power each other up with the classic double battle abilities that were created to show off the mechanic. And I would have been a doubter of these two going into the season. In fact, I'm sure I was. But they've shown up in multiple weeks and actually put in a lot of work. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see them together again in the playoffs. I believe that's the number 10 seed. So next we have the Minnesota Marshadows at number 11. This team is hard to talk about because it drastically changed recently. This was the Mega Charizard Y team through most of the regular season, and then with the trade deadline approaching, they got rid of the Mega Charizard Y. This team, honestly, well, yeah, some of these Pokemon were kind of a mixed bag in how effective they were. Like, I don't think the Mega Sableye has been working super well for this team. I think they've been best off when they've run it as a typical prankster support Sableye, with the option to Mega Evolve in a pinch, but hasn't really worked out as a win con or anything like that. But so much of this team is so new that it's hard to evaluate. Like, okay, we saw Latios go crazy last week with a partner, I think it was Mr. Mime, flinging Salac Berry into it. So Latios got the speed boost from the berry, and then got a weakness policy boost from taking the dark type attack that is Fling. So it was +2 special attack, +2 attack, but they weren't using that, and +1 speed, and it just swept. So if we see something like that again, then Latios will continue to look like a great pickup. Mega Gyarados is interesting. This is the only Mega Gyarados on a roster in either pool, and it's so new to this team. Obviously, it gets Intimidate before it Mega Evolves. It can set up. It can be an offensive threat with that water typing. It's very powerful, but we haven't seen this one do a ton of work yet, so it'll be interesting to see what it can do in the playoffs. Pokemon like Rotom are also new to this team, actually, and Lairon, but I don't know if they're doing much with Lairon. But a lot of the work of getting to the playoffs here, the Mega Charizard Y certainly helped, but a lot of the work has been put in by Pokemon like Conkeldurr, Metagross, and Misdreavus, which have just given them a solid, bulky mode that is able to power through tough threats. Garchomp too, but I feel like Conkeldurr, Metagross, and Misdreavus are the Pokemon that have stood out most to be on this team, with Mr. Mime showing up occasionally as kind of an Agent of Chaos support Pokemon. So Mega Gyarados in the bottom left there is pretty speculative. Probably would have made more sense to put Misdreavus there, honestly, if I'm going by my usual criterion of Pokemon that have put in a lot of work throughout the season. But I'm very curious about what Mega Gyarados will do in the playoffs. We haven't had much opportunity to see anything from it so far, but now it gets the biggest possible stage in this league anyway. Next is... I accidentally skipped one. 1 second. Okay, had to do a quick cut and go back because technical difficulties. We're good now. The Yosemite Yolteons, I don't want to skip them. They've had a solid, well-rounded team. I've said it many weeks. There's only so much you can say about a team that's just made of a bunch of good Pokemon, but this is, of course, the other Mega Gengar team, so they have that fast offensive trapping option. And that's useful to them because they're able to pivot around with Pokemon like, well, they have an excellent Fire, Water, Grass core in Gyarados, Volcarona, and Breloom. Pokemon that have good stats, hit reasonably hard, and all have very disruptive options into opposing teams. Gyarados with Intimidate, some good support options like Taunt and Thunder Wave if they want, and also can set up with Dragon Dance, which I think we've seen sometimes. Volcarona also actually with a mix of good support options and a broken setup move. A very powerful setup move. I don't know if it's broken. And then, of course, Breloom threatening things like Spore and getting priority KOs with Mach Punch sometimes into opponents that could otherwise threaten its teammates. Gyarados also gets cover from electric-type attacks thanks to Raichu, and Raichu has arguably been the MVP for this team. I think Ditto's been more fun to watch, but Raichu's arguably been the MVP because they've been running Focus Sash Endeavor sets pretty often, and they've been getting opponents with that Endeavor, getting key Pokemon down to 1 HP, and then making favorable trades from there. Or, again, sniping KOs with the Breloom Mach Punch, or just Mega Gengar outspeeding things. So Raichu has put in a ton of work throughout the season. Hydreigon is another Pokemon that's put in a lot of work. Its typing and stats complement some of their other pieces pretty well. So again, it can just pivot around and fire off strong attacks. Gardevoir has been helpful here and there as a strong Fairy type. They can just slap like a Choice Scarf on that or something and throw off Fairy type damage, which is just very powerful in this generation. We haven't really seen much from Aggron or Gible, but again, I think the Ditto has been the most entertaining Pokemon to watch. They've been doing one of my favorite things to watch a Ditto team do in Draft League, which is leading Ditto. And I think sometimes just gambling, sometimes actually predicting what Pokemon the opponent will lead with in what slot, and trying to make the most of Ditto's disruptive ability right off the bat as soon as the game begins. I think the peak was when it turned into Hippopotas, which was probably not making the most of it, but yeah, just a ton of fun to watch all season, and they've been playing it really well. I think they've made some good calls leading Ditto or bringing it in at just the right time and just the right position, but I mean, this team has really gotten to the playoffs through a team effort. Most of these Pokemon have put in a ton of work at some point. The Raichu and Breloom also stand out to me, and the Gyarados. And I haven't even mentioned the Mega Gengar, which of course is a giant threat to any kind of opponent they face. Next we have... Next we have the Denver Duots. I, of course, played this team already in Monday's video, so you can go back to that to see how that one turned out. But this is another really difficult, bulky core to break. This is the other team with Heatran, Amoonguss, and Heat Rotom. I don't think it's a coincidence that both of those made the playoffs. They also have their offensive threats in Mega Gardevoir, Excadrill powered up by the sand, Tyranitar setting the sand, and also throwing off a powerful stab Rock Slide. They have Tailwind. They have Tailwind with Noivern, that is true. They have speed control options with Murkrow, but overall, then they have Oshawott and Gulpin. I don't think either of those made an appearance all season, but they, overall this team has a mix of powerful offensive threats and a bulky core that they can fall back on to reposition. That makes it really hard to deal with. They've pivoted around. This coach has pivoted around very effectively throughout the season, and I think a lot of opponents have found it difficult to break through, including me, both of the times we played. But again, can go back to Monday's video to see how that most recently turned out. And then Mega Gardevoir and Excadrill are just such giant threats, especially with them having that complementary Fairy and ground coverage. Again, kind of like the Ogres with Mega Gardevoir and Landorus. And then finally, the last seed in these playoffs, we have the Salt Lake City Toxic just sneaking in. Sorry, all my tech is breaking down. One sec. Okay, the Salt Lake City Toxic just sneaking in. The only team under 500 to make the playoffs, but they got top 6 in Pool B, and in the end, that's what counts. And this team has been a menace throughout the season. Definitely not the easiest for opponents to deal with, even as they've taken some losses here and there. I've, of course, featured the duo of Chansey and Shuckle. I knew they were going to be trouble for opponents, and they are. If you've watched the season, you know the strategy. If you haven't, Shuckle uses Guard Split on Chansey. Chansey is very bulky already with an Eviolite, but its base defense stat is extremely low, and its base special defense is high, but it's still lower than Shuckle, because Shuckle has crazy high defensive stats. In this generation, they might actually be the highest in the game. I'm not sure. So Shuckle averages those defensive stats with Chansey. Now Chansey is even more incredibly bulky than it already was. And that includes on the physical side, not just special. And then Chansey spams minimized to make it harder for opponents to hit it. So they have to break through, and then they're still not going to one-shot it with all that Guard Split bulk. And then we've also seen this Chansey throughout the season spam Calm Mind, so it can set up. It can take special hits even better, so opponents better hope they brought physical attackers against it. But also Chansey is able to do some real damage once it set up some Calm Minds. And then also it can use Soft Boiled for recovery, of course. Honestly, I said that I pointed out that this team lost most of its regular season matches, but sometimes the Chansey Shuckle mode was just unlucky, and opponents got hits just when they needed to. And there are just a few roles that I think could have gone differently for this team to end up with a very different record. So, yeah, they're definitely still going to be a threat. And some regular season opponents were lucky to get by them. That's the Chansey Shuckle mode, but they have so many other powerful combinations, some offensive ones that have been sweeping opponents aside. They have the Whimsicott and Terrakion duo, classic VGC duo. Not only does Whimsicott give Tailwind to support to Terrakion, which is especially powerful because Terrakion gets spread damage and a flinch chance with Rock Slide, but Whimsicott, of course, also can click Beat Up into Terrakion, activating its Justified ability. If you get the maximum 4 hits with Beat Up, i.e. you have all 4 of your Pokemon still conscious, then that's +4 attack on Terrakion instantly, and then it has, even without Tailwind up yet, a pretty fast Rock Slide to claim a bunch of KOs and maybe cheese a flinch if that doesn't happen. Another mode that we've seen put in a ton of work, one that I actually did kind of sleep on after the draft, but has proven no less powerful, is Belly Drum Linoon, so getting to +6 attack immediately, with redirection support. Most often it's been Tangela, which makes sense because Tangela is their bulkier redirector, and it can be disruptive in later turns with moves like Sleep Powder, but they've sometimes also brought Riolu and had both redirectors available, while Linoon just spams Extreme Speed and knocks things out, or clicks Shadow Claw into things that take an extreme speed. So all 3 of those modes, the Salt Lake City Toxic kind of lived up to their name. They are some of the most oppressive modes in Generation 6 VGC, and they're very different ways of playing, right? 2 of them are up-tempo, fast offensive plans, but then they also have the Chansey Shuckle slow mode, which grinds out a painful game for the opponent's side. We've also seen Psych Up on Mega Sableye, so Mega Sableye can copy the Calm Mind and minimize boosts that Chansey has, and that makes that Pokemon extremely hard to remove. We've seen Mega Slowbro just be a bulky, tanky, hard to remove Mega at times. It doesn't really necessarily fit neatly into the other modes, but it's a powerful win con by itself under the right circumstances, and it can set up as well, so it can benefit from the redirection support from Tangela and Riolu. I don't think we've seen Gourgeist or Aromatisse do very much, but this team does so many things already, and they're so scary that that's probably for the best, that at least some of their draft picks have been relatively quiet. So that's the playoff field. I will show the bracket because there's an image that people have been using in the league. I might as well show it. And there is one thing kind of interesting that happened, actually. So this is what the bracket looks like, and if you've been watching throughout the season and you know roughly the background of each team, you can see that with a small number of exceptions, even though the pools are combined for the playoff bracket, for the most part, Pool A have sorted themselves onto the left side, and Pool B have sorted themselves onto the right side. So I talked about how the Metronome battle forced me to play some playoff rematches. The Denver Duots were an opponent I'd already faced in the regular season. Both the Sinister Hand and the Yosemite Yolteons are as well, so that's a guaranteed rematch in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. But it's the same thing in Pool B. People are getting lots of rematches because those teams are mostly on that side. Notably, the top 2 seeds have crossed over. The Ontario Ogres came from Pool B to the otherwise entirely Pool A side of the bracket, and the East Coast Esper, along with Minnesota Marshadows, crossed over to a side that's otherwise all Pool B. But those exceptions aside, it does largely feel like we are getting intra-pool playoffs after all. And of course, you can also see on the bracket the 2 buys. I've talked about them a bunch, but just to drive it home one more time, we will not be seeing the Ontario Ogres or the East Coast Esper this week because they did get the 2 first-round buys. They'll be back next week. But we are about to jump in and see all of the matches that did happen, except Masquerade Men versus Duots, which you can find in Monday's video. But we'll go through the other 5 right now. And we're starting this playoff field with the first match played in the entire bracket, the Elegancy versus Pendragon United. Pendragon United brought the Yamask. That's interesting. That's not a Pokemon I necessarily expected to see in the playoffs. They also have not brought new members, Clefairy and Scraggy, but they are relying on some of the offensive threats that I've talked about before. We see Entei, we see Mamoswine, we see Aegislash, and Mega Salamence. Most of those Pokemon have very flexible sets they could be running, so it'll be interesting to see what they've gone with here. I guess Yamask could be here to try to shut down an Elegancy Trick Room mode, or maybe neutralize setup with Haze, because I mean the Slowbro could go for a setup game plan, or even the Sigilif. So yeah, there are some possibilities to keep an eye on there. They didn't bring the Scraggy, but they do have Fake Out support from the Raichu. On the Elegancy side, a lot of that bulky core is not here. They do have the Slowbro and the Rotom, but it does look like they might be going for a Trick Room game plan with Dusclops setting it up, or Slowbro, for threats like Mawile and Dragalge, as well as, again, Slowbro. But they've also brought the Sigilift, so there could be Tailwind options here as well. I think it's going to be... Obviously, the Mamoswine has Ice Shard. There are a number of priority options, actually, for Pendragon United. Obviously, the Mamoswine can have Ice Shard. I don't know that it does. But, yeah, it feels like the speed control game could be pretty interesting here because the Elegancy have potentially brought multiple options. But it does look like Trick Room is the main one that they're interested in, and it'll be interesting to see what their opponent has prepared to deal with that. Game 1, we see Salamence and Entei against Mawile and Dusclops. So Mawile will be intimidated immediately, but so will Salamence and Entei. They're not necessarily running physically offensive sets, while Mawile is definitely going to be physical, you'd think, but good chance that these are physical as well, so we'll see how the Intimidates affect both game plans here. Oh, we get Frisk as well. It's Safety Goggles Entei. Okay. Well, it's not choice specs, so we can rule that out at least. It's probably going to be a more physical one, but we'll see. Goggles, of course, makes sense, so it can threaten a Moongus, but they didn't bring a Moongus, so that's not very likely to matter this time. Salamence switches out immediately to Yamask as Mawile Mega Evolves. Entei just throws a Sacred Fire at Dusclops. It doesn't do very much, but it does activate that 50% burn chance. I guess I probably thought Mawile was going to switch out. I might have thought that too, yeah. But Mawile just goes for Rock Slide. It immediately crits the Entei and knocks it out. So, rough start to the game. Well, that was Entei's whole game. Rough start to the match for Entei. Did burn the Dusclops, but it didn't do much damage, and then immediately taken out by a crit. Intimidate not bailing it out there. Dusclops sets Trick Room. Salamence comes in. So Salamence doesn't love to be in Trick Room, but still looking forward to seeing what the Yamask is here to do. And worth noting, Mega Mawile is now at -2 attack, although that doesn't matter too much if it just keeps critting. So let's see. Salamence will Mega Evolve. Dusclops taunts the Yamask, and Yamask, it didn't go for Trick Room. Or, yeah, it didn't try to reverse the Trick Room there. That's, I guess, what I was expecting, but it actually just went for Will-O-Wisp, probably into Mawile, because why would he click it into Dusclops unless you're predicting a switch? But that, even then, into what? There's nothing in the back that especially minds being burned, so probably went for Will-O-Wisp into Mawile there, but shut down by the taunt. Rock Slide, though, not critting anybody this time. Salamence just throws a return into Dusclops, crits it back, knocks it out. From how Dusclops took the Sacred Fire, I mean, it could be a not very offensive Entei set, but I feel like Dusclops might have held up pretty well against that return, if not for the crit. So, well, fair's fair, I guess. Crits both ways. And the Elegancy still have their Trick Room up. It still looks like a pretty reasonable position for them as they get Dragalge in here. You'd think that can threaten Salamence pretty effectively. Yamask switching out to Raichu, so Pendragon United now have 2 fast Pokemon on the field with a few turns of Trick Room still left. Salamence will avoid a Dragalge Draco Meteor here. Rock Slide does about a third to Raichu. Now Salamence switches out to Yamask, so I guess they're pivoting around here to get Salamence off the field. Probably try to win the game with it when Trick Room is over, because they don't have much damage otherwise. Dragalge protecting in its own Trick Room avoids the Fake Out from Raichu. Fair enough. That is where the Fake Out would be going because Mawile is so weakened. Interesting that Mawile has just stayed in this whole time, but yeah, I guess that was a pretty obvious Fake Out into Dragalge, so fair enough that Dragalge chose to avoid it. And Raichu takes some more damage from the Rock Slide. I mean, the damage, it did less than a third this time, so the next one probably doesn't KO, but the damage is adding up into Raichu, even with Mawile at -2. Shows what a threat Mawile is without being intimidated. Also, they got rid of the taunt on Yamask with that pivoting, so they can go for another Will-O-Wisp or something if they want. We get Dragalge switching out here on the last turn of Trick Room to bring Slowbro in. I'm surprised Dragalge's not just going for more damage, but maybe they think they need to save that Draco Meteor to hit Salamence? But you'd think they'd have something else to Maybe what they're thinking is because it's the last turn of Trick Room. Oh, you know what? Okay, here's what it probably is. Because it's the last turn of Trick Room, if they knock something out with Dragalge here, they let Salamence in for free when they don't have Trick Room up, which is bad news for them. By pivoting out to Slowbro here, if Slowbro can get through this position, they can try to get Trick Room up again the next turn, and that'll buy time for Dragalge to come back in and knock out Salamence, instead of losing to Salamence when Trick Room is not up. So I was a little puzzled at first, but I actually think that makes perfect sense. That's probably what they're going for. Yamask, though, shows the After You, so it does have... I don't know if it knows Trick Room, but it does have a speed control option there, able to underspeed a lot of the threats on the other side. Yamask has... higher base speed than Dusclops. Dusclops was underspeeding Yamask earlier, so it makes sense that Pendragon United were so adamant to get rid of Dusclops. Now Yamask can use the After You to make its partner go slowest in Trick Room, although it could speed tie with Slowbro. I did just see when I hovered that they have the same base speed. Slowbro, though, just took a ton of damage coming back in. That's going to be a big problem for the Elegancy, because that's going to make it a lot harder to get Trick Room back up, which I think is what they think they need, and they're probably right. Although, again, I feel like if they switched Mawile out, then maybe there'd be a chance to win the game with Mawile, but yeah, if they're trying to win with Dragalge, I think they do need another Trick Room, and it just got a lot harder to get one. Mawile misses Raichu with the Rock Slide. We don't get to see if it KOs. Yamask takes a little bit of chip. Sucker Punch will knock out the Raichu. Huh, okay. Sucker Punch takes out the Raichu, and then Slowbro moving before Yamask. Don't know if it's faster or a speed tie, but it just takes the KO on that Pokemon, so I guess I'm wrong about the Elegancy's game plan here. Maybe they felt like they were under so much pressure they couldn't afford to try to set Trick Room up again. Of course, Slowbro would definitely move after Yamask if they did. So instead they take 2 KOs here, and they have 3 Pokemon left to throw at the Salamence, so maybe they can still beat it with numbers. Maybe so. Salamence is the only Pokemon left for Pendragon United. It takes a Sucker Punch. It is a -2 Sucker Punch. It takes it reasonably well. And the Mawile spent all this time on the field spamming Rock Slide and Sucker Punch. Salamence Earthquake taking out Slowbro here means that Mawile will never get to switch out and get its attack stat back. Dragalge is forced onto the field. Dragalge also weak to the Earthquake. Salamence gets chipped by a Sucker Punch. Mawile's knocked out by the Earthquake. Dragalge survives, so Dragalge has a chance to win the whole game here. And it misses the Draco Meteor. That's got to be frustrating for the Elegancy. They almost had it. If that Draco Meteor connects, they win game 1. And they were playing that really well, I think. I had trouble figuring out the game plan at some points, but once I stopped to take stock of the position that they were in, a lot of those decisions made perfect sense. I still feel like it would have been tidier for them if they'd been able to get the Mawile off the field at some point, but I'm not going to try to go back through and parse every turn and see if there was a good, perfect, great time to switch. It's a little surprising to me that they didn't, but maybe they didn't see an opening for it. But the Mawile would have... I mean, the way it was doing damage at -2 attack, I think it probably would have just swept if it got rid of those Intimidate drops. Good thing for Pendragon United that it didn't. And in the end, it still came down to a Draco Meteor miss, so Pendragon United will probably be looking for a cleaner way to play Game 2, because they definitely got bailed out here, and they definitely know it. But let's see. Mega Salamence, well, regular Salamence right now, and Raichu against Sigilif and Slowbro. Interesting combination there. Suggests very different things about what the speed control options could be, but also either one of these Pokemon could do some setup stuff, but also maybe Sigilif will just damage its partner with Synchronoise again. It would hit Salamence because it's a flying type, but yeah, that's probably not what will happen, but let's see. Salamence just switching out to Aegislash as Slowbro switches out to Rotom. Maybe the real answer here is that the Elegancy led with a fast option and a slow option to scout which one would be better and make a switch. I don't know, but I mean, Rotom coming in here makes sense. What did it just switch in for? Slowbro? Yeah, so it can tank a Thunderbolt from Raichu, no problem, if that's what they want to do. There's also, there's no Fake Out from Raichu, so whatever Raichu is going for, it's not that. It could be a Thunderbolt. Sigilif, though, just throws an Ice Beam into the Salamence slot, but Pendragon United have covered for that, bringing in Aegislash. Takes the Ice Beam, no problem, and now they know that the Sigilif has that. And it's actually Volt Switch, but it's into Sigilif, not Slowbro, so Sigilif takes a ton of damage. The Rotom switch in doesn't really help them here, and Entei gets on the field. And we see leftovers in Aegislash. Sigilif now switching out to Slowbro as Aegislash switches out to Raichu, and Entei throws off a Snarl. So Pendragon United doing a much better job this time putting pressure on the opponent. It feels like, as is so often the case in Draft, the Trick Room made a big difference, and its absence here is making a big difference. Last game, Pendragon United were pivoting around in Trick Room. To some extent, probably just trying to get through the turns. The Yamask being taunted was also kind of awkward. But here, with no Trick Room up and their Pokemon generally faster than what the Elegancy have, they're able to pivot around in a way that, yeah, that pressures the opponent. The Volt Switch into Sigilif instead of Slowbro there paid off for them as well, because Sigilif took a ton of damage. But now they have Raichu back on the field. It can threaten Slowbro again. And this Snarl from Entei seems like it'll be pretty big, because both Slowbro and Rotom want to use their much more likely their special attack stats than their physical. So this is the kind of game that they probably wanted all along, but they had some trouble dealing with the Dusclops in game 1, but the Dusclops doesn't seem to be here this time. We do see foul play from Rotom into Raichu, so that's not going to be harmed by the Snarl drops, but it's also just not doing a ton of damage to a Raichu. Slowbro will protect here and avoid a Thunderbolt as Entei throws a Stone Edge. They do have Stone Edge this week. They crit the Rotom with it. Notably, Stone Edge does have a high crit rate. Of course, it also has a high miss rate. So getting a crit still feels pretty lucky. Rotom, though, does survive it. But both Rotom and Sigilyph have taken a lot of damage now, and Slowbro's under pressure. But this does give Rotom a chance to set up a Light Screen, which will help Slowbro against the offensive pressure from the Raichu, probably. It still takes a lot of damage from a Thunderbolt. That was more than half, but it does survive, and it survives the double up from Sacred Fire. Rotom sets up a Reflect, and Slowbro gets the Trick Room up. So here's where we find out how much difference this Trick Room really makes. The Elegancy have... It's still 4-4, but the Elegancy have 3 of their Pokemon at low HP, while Pendragon United have taken very little damage. But the Trick Room is up, and that was hard for Pendragon United to deal with in Game 1. Let's see if the Elegancy can pull off a sweep, or at least get a favorable position. It starts with a Scald into Entei, does about half. Double up with Foul Play. Entei does have a pretty high attack stat, but it's not quite enough. Entei survives, throws off a Snarl, knocks out Slowbro. Now Raichu is free to knock out Rotom. Rotom's so low, the Volt Switch does that. Raichu pivots out. Aegislash is back in. One of the slower Pokemon on the Pendragon United side. We see Sigilyph forced back onto the field when it really doesn't want to be because it's a fast Pokemon in Trick Room right now. And Aegislash will also underspeed Dragalge. So Dragalge is for sure an offensive threat, but the Trick Room turns are already ticking down too. We'll see if it has enough time and power to pull this off. But Sigilyph kind of feels like a sitting duck here. Aegislash just going for King's Shield this turn and avoids a Shadow Ball from Dragalge, and that means Entei is free to click Snarl. It misses Sigilyph. It does hit Dragalge, so that special attack drop again could be pretty significant. Looking over it now, I guess the Elegancy brought mainly special attackers except Mawile. That's their one big ticket physical attacker. And after Mawile got intimidated twice in Game 1 and narrowly avoided getting burned, they have not brought it to Game 2. It still did a ton of damage in Game 1. But yeah, not here this time. The Entei was a giant threat into it with Sacred Fire, but now we know the Entei with Snarl is also a giant threat into its teammates. Entei is just a problem for this team, I guess. That said, the Snarl does miss Sigilyph here. Sigilyph throws an Ice Beam into Entei, and it's enough to KO. Entei so low after the Scald, I think, that Sigilyph does manage to knock it out there. I wonder whether Sigilyph is choiced, and that's why it's using Ice Beam to cover for Salamence coming back in, but I don't know if we'll find out. Raichu's going to come back in first. It can fake out something. It chooses Dragalge. I'm guessing Aegislash will just snipe the KO on Sigilyph here. I finished saying the sentence even though I was already proven wrong. It actually sets up a substitute, but Sigilyph is not a threat to break that substitute, especially if we think it's probably choice locked into Ice Beam. We know that's going to do less than a quarter to Aegislash. So with Dragalge forced to flinch there, that substitute's pretty much free. They can be patient, leave the Sigilyph around for now. It's not doing that much to Raichu anyway. Aegislash will continue to stall at the Trick Room with a King's Shield, as Raichu takes the KO on Sigilyph with a totally unnecessary Thunderbolt crit. Some crits in this set have mattered, but not that one. And now Dragalge is alone just as Trick Room ends. It is behind screens, but there's no way for the Trick Room to come back up, and it's at -1 special attack, and now it's paralyzed by the Snuzzle from Raichu, and now Aegislash is finally attacking. Shadow Claw with its high crit rate, no crit this time, but Dragalge fully paralyzed. Aegislash going for a King's Shield, probably stalling out these screens at this point. Might as well. It baits out a Protect too, but yeah, might as well do damage as efficiently as it can here. Light Screen fading. Thunderbolt will chip the Dragalge down a little bit. Aegislash doesn't quite get the KO with that final Shadow Ball. It's or Shadow Claw, excuse me. Its substitute is broken by what I'm sure was an unnecessary Shadow Ball crit. But finally breaking through the Shadow Ball is too little too late. As actually, I thought Raichu would take the KO, but no, Life Orb Dragalge drops to its Life Orb damage. And so after, honestly, a pretty lucky win in Game 1, a game that they lose 9 times out of 10, but this one happened to be the 1 out of 10. Pendragon United then have a pretty dominant Game 2. Able to do enough damage before the Trick Room went up, and then position around the Trick Room with Raichu and Aegislash that the Elegancy just couldn't break through this time. So Pendragon United take the 2-0 win and are the first team, because they played before I did, the first team to advance to the quarterfinals. Next we have Bois. That was probably not the most pleasant one to listen to. We have Bois taking on the Salt Lake City Toxic. And what did I say? There's no Mega Latios. Bois are practically a Mega-less team in recent weeks. I forgot to mention the Escavalier, I guess, when I was... Or no, I think I mentioned it. The Hariyama I don't think we've seen much of, but it looks like their usual Trick Room stuff. Trevenant, Escavalier, and Hariyama for a Trick Room core. Arcanine, good Pokemon. Greninja, fast, disruptive, unpredictable Pokemon. Ditto, Agent of Chaos. Ditto is actually super fun in this matchup because... Oh, well, the Toxic didn't bring the Chansey, but if they had brought the Chansey, Ditto could copy all its boosts. That could still happen on something like a Linoon or a Slowbro or a Terrakion game plan. The Toxic have a lot of setup options. That's kind of their thing. The Toxic have brought the Whimsicott Terrakion duo. They brought both of their Megas, so who knows what to expect from those. And they do also have the duo of Tangela and Linoon. Although Linoon breaking through Escavalier and Trevenant, and maybe Intimidate Arcanine as well, doesn't feel super likely to me, so I don't know how much we'll see from that. Escavalier also notably immune to Rage Powder with Overcoat, so Tangela can't redirect it. But we could see the Terrakion go crazy, maybe. I mean, it could be intimidated. It's threatened by Hariyama. Yeah, I don't know what the game plans are for the Toxic, but they didn't bring Chansey, so we'll probably see something more aggressive regardless. Hariyama and Escavalier against Tangela and Slowbro. Okay, interesting. Hariyama switching out immediately to Trevenant as Slowbro Mega Evolves. Tangela not going for Rage Powder, just throwing a Sleep Powder into the Hariyama slot, but instead catching Trevenant, which does nothing because Trevenant, of course, is immune to Sleep Powder, being a Grass type. Slowbro will set up a Calm Mind. So Calm Mind Slowbro seems to be the plan here from the Toxic, but Escavalier has gone for turn 1 Swords Dance, gotten a +2 attack. It can threaten super effective Bug Stab into Slowbro, and again, it's assuming it's running Overcoat, which I think you would in this matchup. It's immune to Rage Powder. Actually, I don't know why I'm pretending. I know that they're running Overcoat. I had that knowledge before they played. It's immune to Rage Powder. So Escavalier looks like a giant threat in Slowbro. Slowbro notably going for Calm Mind first and not Iron Defense if it has that. Rage Powder will come out here. They might have forgotten about the Overcoat or thought that maybe they should at least scout whether it's there. The Trevenant, of course, is a Grass type unaffected by Rage Powder. Throws a Leech Seed into Slowbro, so Slowbro is going to be gradually worn down by that as it tries to set up. Scald comes out from Slowbro into Escavalier. Slowbro outspeeding... Mega Slowbro does have higher base speed than Escavalier, how about that? Outspeeding Escavalier and gets the burn, and Escavalier... I mean, I'm pretty sure I have inside information that it's running Overcoat, but this was not a bug attack into Slowbro. It wasn't a bug attack into anything, actually. It was an Iron Head into Tangela. Does about 35%. So, good turn there for the Slowbro. It is getting worn down by the Leech Seed, but it got a lot of damage and an attack drop onto Escavalier. Tangela still spamming Rage Powder. Trevenant maybe anticipating a switch, going for Leech Seed, but of course Grass types are immune. And Slowbro setting up that Iron Defense now. That's going to be kind of hard for Escavalier to deal with when it's burned. Slowbro is probably running Slack Off, so when the Leech Seed damage adds up more, it can get rid of it with that. Also getting lucky with its Scald burns. 2 Scalds so far and 2 burns. This one burning the Trevenant, which will weaken that Horn Leech that was already not doing very much into Slowbro's +2 defense. And of course, Mega Slowbro gets Shell Armor, so you can't even crit it. So it looks like Bois just don't have enough damage so far, but let's see what they have up their sleeve. We see Feint Attack on the Escavalier. Not a bug attack. Feint Attack still super effective into Mega Slowbro. They have Iron Head to cover Terrakion, but I think that the point of running that is you have that option into the Slowbro, but also Feint Attack can't miss. It's like Swift. It's a perfect accuracy attack, like a Swift or Aerial Ace. So if they had set up the minimize spam with Chansey, then Swords Dance Escavalier would have a guaranteed way to always connect with that target. So I guess that's why they're running Feint Attack instead of Bug Stab, but it's probably just not going to be strong enough here when Escavalier is burned and Slowbro is defense boosted. and you can't crit it. It did like 10 to 15%. Slowbro is getting worn down thanks to the Leech Seed. Tangela will switch out here to Terrakion. So Leech Seed into Terrakion could be beneficial to Trevenant here, but they didn't go for it again. They went for Horn Leech into Slowbro, and it did single-digit percent with Trevenant burned and Slowbro boosted. Slowbro does show the slack off, still outspeeding Escavalier, of course. Escavalier went for Iron Head into Terrakion, so at +2, even with the burn, that does just one shot. But they got Regenerator on Tangela probably by doing that. And Escavalier now drops to its burn. Yep, Tangela's back. It's healthy again. Hariyama's back as well. Fake out into Tangela, but I mean, it feels like Tangela... feels like it's not even that necessary that Tangela do much. I guess this gives Hariyama a chance to get burned if it's running a Guts set with Flame Orb, but before Tangela can put it to sleep. But Slowbro is clearly the main carry here for the Toxic. Tangela is kind of just hanging out. So I don't know how much that flinch is going to matter. Trevenant maybe gets 10% with that Horn Leech, but yeah, it's pretty underwhelming damage. And again, you can't even crit Mega Slowbro. There's a Rage Powder. It'll redirect close combat from Hariyama. That wasn't doing much to Slowbro anyway. But Slowbro ends up not having to take that damage. Slowbro is now the slowest Pokemon on the field, so it is nice, I guess, to give it some more cover for that slack off. The Leech Seed is in theory wearing it down, but it's still, with the slack off, able to just sit here and tank this out. Hariyama will knock out Tangela now, but Slowbro is still just not taking very much damage. Now it throws a Scald at Hariyama, knocks that out. Hariyama clicked close combat a couple times, so its defenses were lowered. Slowbro at +2. Plenty able to knock it out with that Scald. Not doing much to Trevenant, but Trevenant's not doing much back. And now we see Greninja and Whimsicott are the last two Pokemon here. Greninja immediately going for an Ice Beam, knocking Whimsicott down to a Focus Sash. And then taking a Moonblast, having, of course, turned into an Ice type thanks to Protean. So it does about half, so if Greninja were still a Dark type, it would KO. Could be Sash Greninja, we don't know, but it does take the Moonblast there. It'll have a chance to knock out Whimsicott next, but I don't know if they have enough to beat Slowbro. Okay, it does. Okay, actually, Trevenant doubled into Whimsicott, so that will knock that out. Slowbro's now alone, but Bois down to the last two Pokemon. Scald takes out Greninja. It's just Trevenant versus Slowbro, and I don't know if Trevenant has a way to break through. The Horn Leech is just not doing enough damage. Slowbro going for another slack off. The Leech Seed at least is forcing them to burn more slack off PP, but I don't know if it's enough. Bois clearly ready for a PP battle here as they're using Leech Seed instead of using up their Horn Leech. Now protecting. So, I mean, I don't think I'll be pausing this game anymore. It's just a question of whether they have a way to break through, but that Horn Leech does so little, and there's no way it can ever crit. They are forcing out more slack offs more quickly thanks to the Leech Seed. I just don't know if it'll be enough. And I don't know what else there is to say as we watch this play out. The Scald at +2 is also doing decent chip damage. We do see Trevenant activate a Citrus Berry there, and it has Harvest, so it gets the berry back, so it has a recovery loop of its own. Actually, that might be enough to get Trevenant through this, if it can keep harvesting its berry. But Slowbro just... honestly, Slowbro is pretty free if it wants to get the rest of its Calm Minds, and then that Scald will do serious damage. So I feel like that's an option available to the Toxic anytime. But let's see what they do. Strap in, folks, in the chat, so I don't think they're setting up to win the game with this. Scald, of course, can also crit. Trevenant is not crit immune, so that might be what settles this. But I do feel like the Toxic could just be setting up more Calm Minds here. Maybe I'm missing something. There's a Scald crit. It doesn't do that much. And thanks to Harvest, yeah, Trevenant is able to keep itself reasonably healthy with that berry. It's not great recovery, but we saw that a Scald crit doesn't do too terribly much. And of course, Trevenant's recovery is passive. It doesn't have to use a move to execute it like Slowbro does, clicking slack off. So Trevenant is pretty safe to... It doesn't have to do anything to make its recovery happen. So that's a bit of a benefit for them here, but again, I feel like Slowbro could just be setting up more. And that would seal it. What is the PP on slack off? This is Gen 6. Recovery move PP was not nerfed. Yeah, I mean, they've used a decent number, but they still have a lot left. They're not quite... Okay, after this one, they're halfway through. After this one, they're halfway through. If Trevenant keeps harvesting that berry, I think it can win this. There was a chat message about this being a lucky Trevenant because it keeps harvesting that berry so successfully. That is true. They've had some good luck with that, but it's also getting a lot of time to keep doing it because the Scald just isn't doing terribly much. The Leech Seed offsets the burn. Trevenant's getting... HP is getting a little bit dicey here. But it just needs that berry back anytime. And it's also been pain splitting when it's low and Slowbro's higher. But okay, Slowbro is finally setting up more Calm Minds. I think the Toxic, assuming they haven't used up all their Scalds, which they haven't, I think setting up more Calm Minds wins this for them. I think they were in serious danger of losing if they never did that, but it is finally time. Slowbro's at +5 now. It'll probably go to +6, and then we'll see what a Scald does from there. Is Trevenant out of Horn Leeches? It is. But it's not about the Horn Leech anyway. The Horn Leech was never doing enough. It's about getting through Slowbro's slack-offs and winning the PP war. But also it's about Slowbro not setting up more Calm Minds. I think those Calm Minds win the game for the Toxic, but let's see. That Scald does a lot of damage. Trevenant, yeah, even the Citrus Berry is not enough here. I think another Scald might just KO, but well, Trevenant's now protecting, hoping to get his berry back and get back over that threshold, but it does happen. Okay, I think it's out of Scald range now, but I don't think this is a long-term plan. Okay, Slowbro slacking off, stretching things out a little bit more. Trevenant gets the berry back out of that, though. Slowbro now going for the Iron Defense. It's not out of Scalds, is it? No, it's not. It still has some left. But just finishing its setup here. It almost feels like they want to play a long game at this point. Maybe this is psychological warfare, demoralizing the opponent, because this is only game 1, and it just hit turn 40. Maybe they're trying to tilt Bois for game 2. And there's another Scald. Trevenant is out of Citrus range. It didn't harvest the berry there anyway, but that's an awkward HP value to be at, as that Scald knocks it really low. Does it get its berry back? It doesn't. It's going to protect for another chance. Slowbro taking the opportunity to slack off. Trevenant gets the berry, gets the recovery. I think it's still in Scald range, though. Well, maybe not after a pain split. Oh, that almost knocked it out, but not quite. The Leech Seed keeps Trevenant around. It doesn't get the berry back. It protects for another chance. And gets the berry. Goes for the double protect because it needs the berry again. It's in Scald range. Does not get the double. And on turn 45, the Salt Lake City Toxic take the win. That Slowbro was on the field for the entire game, Leech seeded for most of it, and it just never fell. Bois was never able to break through. In a way, I think they did kind of exploit a weakness in this Bois team, which is that other than the Escavalier, well, I mean, Guts Hariyama hits super hard, but of course Slowbro resists his stab, and it's susceptible to Rage Powder. Otherwise, like, I think the Sword Stance Escavalier, especially if it had a bug attack, would be their best tool to overwhelm Slowbro, but it got burned by the very first Scald of the game. And otherwise, they don't really have that massive damage to break through Mega Slowbro setup. It does kind of feel like the Toxic found just the right game plan to bring in Game 1. And again, maybe they've also demoralized their opponent with how long this dragged out, but a lot of possibilities in Game 2. The Toxic could try something different this time. Yes, that was only Game 1. But also, I wonder whether we'll see the Ditto from Bois. I wonder whether we'll see Mega Slowbro versus Mega Slowbro. That one will be hard to commentate if it happens, but let's see. Okay, Hariyama leading with Greninja this time against Tangela and Slowbro, of course. Slowbro will Mega Evolve. Fake Out goes into Tangela, and they taunt the Slowbro. Okay, so that'll shut down its setup options. That was good. Fake Out to stop Rage Powder, Taunt to stop Slowbro from just clicking setup buttons. Guess Slowbro could still be a threat with Scald, but of course Hariyama benefits from being burned. I think it's about to get burned anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So they have put a ton of pressure on the Slowbro here at the beginning of Game 2. It's going to be a very different game, I think. It's Scald into Hariyama. No burn, but then the Flame Orb burns Hariyama anyway. We see Greninja switch out to Trevenant as Hariyama just throws a close combat into Tangela, but that means there's nothing attacking the Slowbro this turn. Tangela showing the Leaf Storm. Tangela, give that Pokemon some respect, I guess. It used to be fully evolved. Easy to forget now. It has at least a usable special attack stat. That Leaf Storm into -1 special defense Hariyama knocks it out, and nothing targeted the Slowbro this turn. The Slowbro is taunted. Bois probably thought it would switch out, which I think is understandable because clicking Scald in that position didn't look that good, but it is just staying in. It gets a chance to burn the Trevenant now. No burn. Greninja's back. Whimsicott switches out to Terrakion and Slowbro, Tangela to Terrakion, Slowbro to Whimsicott. That means Whimsicott comes in on an Ice Beam, but we know it has a Focus Sash. Nope, Terrakion came in on an Ice Beam. My bad. Makes sense. They were targeting. Oh, that's really tricky by the Toxic. Greninja was targeting Tangela. Makes sense. Slowbro stayed in last turn, even though it was taunted. Why would you Ice Beam the Slowbro slot when Slowbro doesn't seem to want to switch out? Well, now it does, and they get their other Ice weakness onto the field safely because the Ice Beam's going to the other slot. Terrakion takes that reasonably well, and Whimsicott avoids a Leech Seed that was targeting Slowbro. We see Trevenant switch out to a Escavalier, so there is no Ditto in this game. Bois are not subjecting us to that, at least. Instead, hoping the Taunt Greninja can shut the Mega Slowbro down. But now they're facing the Terrakion Whimsicott mode, and let's see what they have for that. Whimsicott says Tailwind here, so that's going to be tricky for Greninja because it's not going to be the fastest thing around. It will turn itself into a Grass type here, targeting a Grass Knot into Terrakion. Interesting, but Terrakion protected. We see Protect from Escavalier. There's the side beat up from Whimsicott. That'll get Terrakion to +4 attack. Still a setup mode, but a much faster paced one than we saw from the Toxic last game. And the Rock Slide obviously doesn't do damage to Escavalier. It confirms a Focus Sash on Greninja. We also see Life Orb on Terrakion, so as Terrakion is taking damage quickly between the Ice Beam, the tiny bit of chip from the beat up, now its own Life Orb, but yeah, knocks Greninja down to its Sash there. It's not really clear what Bois have to deal with this, especially since Hariyama has been knocked out now, so they don't have that Fake Out pressure available. Well, let's see. A Moonblast from Whimsicott will take out the 1 HP Greninja. Terrakion then free to throw a close combat into Escavalier, knocking that out. And Terrakion's getting worn down, but Bois are already down to just Trevenant. Whimsicott goes for a second beat up. Why not, I guess? Get that Terrakion to +6. Couple of redundant hits. And then single target Rock Slide connects and knocks out Trevenant. So that was a much quicker game than the last one, that's for sure. Bois showed that they did have an answer to Mega Slowbro, although honestly, Mega Slowbro clicking Scald was still kind of a threat. It just wasn't getting the burns this time. But the Toxic really locking in here, played that super well, switched Slowbro out at just the right time to get this mode set up, and then Terrakion was able to just sweep while Bois were bent out of shape trying to deal with the Slowbro mode. So absolutely devious stuff from the Salt Lake City Toxic. Pretty much what everyone was afraid of coming out of the draft, except they didn't even bring Chansey to this one. And they will move on to the quarterfinals. Next, we have the Ryan Green Blue Porygon 2s. I can't believe I have like 3 more matches to go through. That feels like it might have been the entire round just now. But we have the Ryan Green Blue Porygon 2s taking on the Book Club. Porygon 2s bringing both of their Megas, bringing 3 different possible ground immunities, 2 guaranteed and 1 possible, to put next to Mega Garchomp. Otherwise, just a pretty typical mix of Pokemon that we would see from this team. Redirection available from Togekiss, Fake Out support available from Manchao, Bronzong able to set Trick Room for Abomasnow. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Gravity Hypnosis spam again. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they choose their game plan here. The Garchomp doesn't look amazing for me here because the Book Club have brought both Megas, Tornadus, Crawdaunt, Scizor, Arcanine. The Book Club have brought possible Wide Guard on Gallade. They've brought Ground Immunity and Tornadus. They brought Intimidate probably on Arcanine. So they have ways to cover for Garchomp for sure. Abomasnow could also be in a tricky spot because Gallade Wide Guard isn't great for that either, and it matches up really badly into Arcanine and Scizor. But I could see Ryan Green Blue playing toward a Trick Room mode. Again, with the Gravity Spam, honestly, if they can get Pokemon like Arcanine asleep, then Mega Abomasnow could potentially put in a lot of work here, or Mega Garchomp if they get the positioning right. But both of their Megas are under a lot of pressure from some of these threats. But I believe Gravity would also shut down Skydrop, so that's something they can think about too. It'll also be interesting to see if the Tornadus has brought Rain Dance to power up the Crawdaunt, and there's no Zapdos here, but yeah, to power up the Crawdaunt and disrupt a Hail game plan. I don't know actually what the best Mega for the Porygon 2s is here, but I actually think Bronzong Hypnosis Spam is totally reasonable either way. And we'll see what kind of offense the Book Club throw back at them. We've got Lopunny and Tornadus against Bronzong and Mienshao. So Lopunny will Mega Evolve immediately, but Mienshao will go first and fake out Lopunny. I thought they might fake out Tornadus here to shut down a possible taunt or something into Bronzong, but that just opens up a fake out into Bronzong, I guess, and you accomplish nothing this turn. So yeah, they go for the fake out into Lopunny instead. It could be Mental Orb Bronzong to deal with the taunt. We will find out. It is Mental Orb Bronzong. It gets Trick Room up. Lopunny now switching out to Scizor as Tornadus sets up the Rain Dance. Bronzong not bothering with the Gravity right now, just going for Hypnosis immediately. It misses the Tornadus, but it doesn't look like Bronzong's under a ton of pressure here. I mean, the Scizor could be carrying like Night Slash. I guess neither team is threatening very much really obvious damage here. Except the Tornadus into Mienshao, but being one of the faster Pokemon on the field is an issue. But if you're Ryan Green-Blue, you definitely want that Hypnosis to connect, and it doesn't. We see Low Kick into Scizor. That does a lot of damage, actually. This time, okay, the second Hypnosis does connect into Tornadus. Can't even call that hacks. It's what, like a 60% accurate move? They adjusted it over the years. I think it's about 60. So missing one and hitting the next seems pretty fair. Scizor does show knockoff into Bronzong. Bronzong does not have an item right now, so let's see how much this does. It still does a lot. And we see Life Orb on the Scizor, but then it drops to a Low Kick. That crit absolutely didn't matter. We saw the first Low Kick do more than that. And Tornadus is asleep. So Porygon 2 is still putting out a lot of pressure, but Lopunny's here now. This time it can fake out Mienshao. Mienshao wasn't threatening fake out anyway because it's been on the field for a few turns. But, yeah, Lopunny, well, just completely free to click that. Avoid any kind of Low Kick or anything. What we see from Bronzong, the Gravity finally going up. Mienshao is running Inner Focus. It gets that ability. That's right. I knew that. I didn't even think about it. I just assumed it really was going to flinch. But nope. Absolutely winning the flinch support game here as it gets a Low Kick into Lopunny anyway. Lopunny does narrowly survive at something that you could say kind of resembles 1 HP. As Tornadus is still asleep. And now Gyro Ball crits the Tornadus, knocks it down to its Focus Sash, and Low Kick takes out Lopunny with another crit. That one certainly didn't matter. A lot of crits this week. I feel like a lot of crits most week. There's crits all over the place in this league, but some of them are just for style points, I guess, as Lopunny is taken out by that. Oh, Mienshao went first turn 1 because Mega Pokemon don't get their new speed stats right away, right? So it outsped regular Lopunny on the same turn that it turned into Mega Lopunny, so it's still the regular speed stat. I think everyone in the league forgets that interaction at least occasionally. But Lopunny was faster once Mega evolved, so yeah, it just gets taken out by a Low Kick there. Tornadus wakes up, though. Hurricane will knock out Mienshao. But again, where's the pressure into Bronzong? Now we have Abomasnow coming in, but Abomasnow... So, this is interesting. Abomasnow sets up the Hail. Tornadus can click Rain Dance to get rid of the Hail. Abomasnow can Mega Evolve and set the Hail up again, but its Mega Evolution will come out before the Rain Dance, so it probably doesn't want to do that this turn. So they're pretty... They have a pretty clear incentive... Oh, I guess... Oh, did Trick Room end? Yeah, okay, Trick Room ended just now as well. Abomasnow actually has a pretty clear incentive to not Mega Evolve here, but I don't actually know what the best call is. We'll see what they come up with. Also, Crawdaunt is here. That's a scary offensive Pokemon. Gonna make it hard for Bronzong to get a Trick Room back up if that's something it wants to do. But let's see what they've got here. Abomasnow does Mega Evolve immediately and it just protects. Are they going for the Trick Room again? Well, Rain Boosted Waterfall into Bronzong prevents that from being an option. We got someone in the chat. It's funny if you don't click Mega Evolve here. I think they were probably thinking the same thing I was. But the Mega Evolve was clicked. And Garchomp is here. Garchomp can't Mega Evolve because Abomasnow already did. Abomasnow can't switch out because these are the only 2 Pokemon left. So the Hail is never going back up. Unless Abomasnow is running the move Hail, but that's very unlikely. And yeah, there's no Trick Room. Crawdaunt was just too powerful, knocked out Bronzong. Wasn't really much hope of getting a second Trick Room there, if that's even what they were going for, which it might well not have been. But now Abomasnow's kind of vulnerable. In fact, Hurricane just knocks it out. Garchomp moves next. It gets a Stone Edge into Tornadus, but a little too late as Life Orb... Nope, not Life Orb. That was Rough Skin damage, but whatever the item is, could even be a Choice Band, because we didn't see it switch moves. Rain boosted, presumably adaptability boosted. Waterfall has no problem knocking out the Garchomp. So, just a slugfest there, but the Book Club come out ahead, and we'll see what the Porygon 2s come up with in Game 2. We have Tornadus and Gallade against Bronzong and Mienshao. Gallade will Mega Evolve, so that's the Mega of choice for the book club this time. It gets faked out, but it gets inner focus, so once again we'll see a fake out not accomplish a flinch. But Tornadus just sky dropping the Bronzong. Here we go, first sky drop of the playoffs. Bronzong will be unable to set Trick Room this turn if that's what it went for, and Gallade not flinched. I swear I was about to say just goes ahead and lands a Zen Headbutt into Mienshao. That was the exact wording that came to mind, but it actually didn't land a Zen Headbutt because it missed. That'll be accuracy boosted if the gravity goes back up, though, so that could get pretty scary for the team that has gravity. Anyway, Bronzong dropped out of the sky here as Mienshao goes for a Rock Tomb into Tornadus, which does a bunch of damage. It also slows Tornadus down, which could make for some funny Trick Room interactions. Gallade misses a Zen Headbutt again. And no Trick Room right now, just gravity. Again, the gravity will make the Zen Headbutt more likely to hit. In fact, I don't remember the multiplier for gravity, but I'm sure that Zen Headbutt will be close to 100%. But no more sky dropping, at least. Tornadus setting up the rain here. I wonder whether Crawdaunt is in the back. Sets up the rain before getting knocked out by a low kick crit. More crits for good measure. Zen Headbutt will connect this time, knock Mienshao down to a Focus Sash. But if you're the book club, you're probably annoyed that you weren't able to do that earlier, as Bronzong lands that accuracy boosted Hypnosis into Gallade, forcing that Pokemon to take a nap. Now Scizor is here. Mienshao will switch out to Wash Form Rotom, which takes a Bullet Punch no problem with that double resistance. Yeah, the Life Orb is on Scizor. We knew that already, so of course it wasn't on Crawdaunt. But, I mean, Bronzong was fine to set Trick Room here anyway if it wants, because we know it... Do we know it takes a knockoff? No, it got hit by knockoff when it didn't have an item in Game 1. Actually, I think knockoff, while it does have an item, might have KO'd. But Scizor went for the Bullet Punch into Mienshao instead. Does very little to Rotom. Bronzong actually just goes for Hypnosis into Scizor, so now both Pokemon for the book club are asleep. And they stay asleep this next turn, so free turn for the Porygon 2s. Rotom goes for Hidden Power into Scizor. Not a very difficult guess the Hidden Power. It has to be Fire, doing super effective damage to a Scizor. So the Rain kind of coming in clutch for the book club here, as that did pretty unimpressive damage for a Fire-type attack into a Scizor because it's weakened by the Rain. Bronzong still not bothering with Trick Room, just goes for a Gyro Ball into Gallade, chips it down a fair bit. Now Rotom switching out to Garchomp. Gallade will wake up here, set up a Sword Stance. But another Gyro Ball, I think, takes it out. And that is what happens. Okay. And Gallade was in more danger than it knew, I guess. Crawdaunt comes in with one turn of Rain left. Bronzong will pivot out to Mienshao. We know it has Inner Focus, so no recovery from Regenerator. Garchomp just Mega Evolves and Protects here. Gets out of the Rain, I guess. Scizor stays asleep. Is that max sleep turns? It is. Yep. Garchomp avoids a Waterfall, and that won't be boosted by Rain anymore after this turn. Fake out now into Crawdaunt. Scizor wakes up, Bullet Punches Mienshao, but not before the Fake out, so Crawdaunt will have to flinch. Garchomp first, landing an Earthquake that takes out the Scizor, and now Rotom and Garchomp against Crawdaunt. Rotom able to throw off a Thunderbolt and grab the KO, and I kept waiting for the Trick Room to go up, but it never did. The Porygon 2 is able to overwhelm their opponent without even setting it, thanks largely to that Gravity Hypnosis game plan that we've seen throughout much of the season, but also leaving the Abomasnow behind and bringing their faster Mega Garchomp. Yeah, help them keep up the pressure without Trick Room going up. But I feel like the two things that made the biggest difference here were the sleep from Hypnosis. They got a couple of good long sleeps there after the gravity went up. And also, of course, Mienshao dodging 2 Zen Headbutts in a row. So I don't know if you can safely repeat that. Let's see what kind of plan they bring to Game 3. We have Gallade and Crawdaunt. Very offensive lead for the book club against, once again, Bronzong and Mienshao. Gallade will Mega Evolve, but Mienshao not falling for it this time, throws the Fake out into Crawdaunt instead. Gallade just goes straight for a Sword Stance. Is it Trick Room from Bronzong? It is. Trick Room is up. Gallade is boosted, though. There's still a ton of damage threatened. Gallade protects and avoids a Hypnosis. Bronzong's just knocked out by a knockoff. Again, it has an item here. Also, this is Crawdaunt. Its knockoff is probably hitting way harder than Scizor's. So that's it for Bronzong. That's the only Trick Room they're getting this game. Let's see what they can do with it. Mienshao goes for a U-turn. Does a bunch of damage to Crawdaunt. More than half. And Mega Abomasnow is back. They have brought it again. They will get a chance to take advantage of the Hail, as Tornadus is not currently on the field to get rid of it. The Hail chip is already kind of nice. Just getting a little bit of damage into these two, right? Now we get Manshao here. Of course, it can't fake... Well, it can fake out the Gallade, but it won't cause it to flinch. This Gallade probably doesn't have Wide Guard, because we've seen Swords Dance Protect and Zen Headbutt. I don't think we've seen the last move. Maybe we have. But you're not going to run Wide Guard with Swords Dance and Protect. So Blizzard's pretty safe here. Maybe you just double Gallade with Blizzard and like U-turn? Let's see. Okay, Crawdaunt switches out to Scizor. That'll take a Blizzard pretty well. Abomasnow Mega Evolves. It's actually just fake out into the Crawdaunt slot, so it hits Scizor for a tiny bit of damage. The flinch doesn't matter here because it switched anyway. Blizzard crits Gallade. That's pretty good for the Porygon 2s. It doesn't quite KO. Gallade getting somewhat close to 1 HP, but still surviving, but it goes to show that Blizzard wouldn't have done a massive amount of damage. I guess Gallade is a pretty specially bulky Pokemon even before it Mega Evolves. But, I mean, the Hail Chip can be interesting now that they got that Blizzard crit. That's a good crit for the Porygon 2s, especially as they lose Abomasnow immediately to a close combat, so that crit might save them down the line, but let's see. That Hail damage, looks like it'll still take a couple more turns of Hail damage. Scizor protects here. Gallade, slower than Manshao, I guess. So taking advantage of the Trick Room then. Higher base speed, but of course a lot depends on the EVs and stuff. Slower than Manshao, or maybe speed tying. Gets a close combat for the KO. What broke the sash on Manshao? Was it the Hail damage? Yeah, so the Trick Room and Hail kind of actually backfiring on the Porygon 2s here, even with that Blizzard crit. As it is the Hail damage that breaks the sash. They lose Abomasnow to a close combat. Gallade underspeeds Manshao, takes that out with a close combat, not rolling the dice on Zen Headbutt this time, I guess. And Scizor has avoided whatever the Rotom wants to do. And that Rotom is already the last Pokemon for the Porygon 2s. Their Pokemon have been disappearing pretty quickly. Gallade does take one more turn of Hail damage. Knockoff removes a Choice Scarf from the Rotom. But it's still too fast in this Trick Room to deal with the Gallade. And Close Combat takes it out. So Gallade put in a ton of work here. Yeah, solid effort by the Porygon 2s. I do feel like the Mega Garchomp... Well, it definitely was the Mega that worked out better for them. But they had some better luck in Game 2 than the other games as well. But yeah, the Book Club were definitely prepared for the Abomasnow, and it was not able to turn things around in either Game 1 or Game 3. So the Book Club overcome the Gravity Spam, and we won't be seeing any more of that as Porygon 2s are eliminated and the Book Club will move on. Next we have Genie Incarnate taking on the Minnesota Marshadows in what I believe is the only crossover match between the two pools in this round. Genie Incarnate have brought Mega Gengar and Dugong. Is it Perish Trap this time? I would think probably not. But who knows what tricks they have up their sleeves. Actually, Dugong looks pretty weird in this matchup. It does, I guess, threaten Ice-type damage into Latios, but I don't know what else it does here. No Conkeldurr from the Marshadows is interesting. They're really giving some of the new Pokemon a try. They brought 3 of the new Pokemon. Latios, Gyarados, and Rotom are all here. But I was talking about Genie Incarnate. They've got the Noivern Crocodile duo, which could be pretty interesting in terms of the offensive pressure they can put out. They got the Tangrowth. I feel like with this team, I often have to see what the game plans are before I can really puzzle them out. But they've got a few possible combinations they can throw out there. And they have brought Pikachu Bell, which is super interesting. Pikachu Bell could be a giant offensive threat into some of the strongest Pokemon on the other side, as of course Gyarados is, well, it's not double weak to Electric when it Mega Evolves, but it's still very threatened by the Electric Stab. And Icicle Crash gives Pikachu Bell something to throw at Latios. So we could see that be a real offensive threat in this matchup, and I kind of hope we'll get a look at what it does. On the Marshadow side, they brought Latios and Mr. Mime again. In fact, they're in the first two slots, so I wonder whether we'll see Fling Weakness Policy stuff again. That would be fun. But they've also brought Mega Gyarados with possible support options from Mr. Mime, Rotom, Mischievous. Yeah, Conkeldurr's not here, but Metagross is. I don't know, let's see. This was not very sneaky, by the way. Not your best effort. Okay. Noivern and Pikachu Bell against Latios and Mr. Mime. So are they just going for it? No. It's definitely not Salic Berry Mr. Mime because it has a Choice Scarf. And it's not weakness. More importantly, it's not weakness policy Latios as the Frisk reveals an Assault Vest. So I guess they're bluffing the same tech from last week. But yeah, no weakness policy means no Fling plan, I would think. Maybe Mr. Mime is here to just click Dazzling Gleam. Or Psychic into Gengar, but in this position, more likely Dazzling Gleam. Let's see. Fast Scarf, Fairy type damage is always pretty valuable, I guess. Noivern will switch out to Dugong, avoiding that possible threat as Pikachu goes for Protect. Probably scout what the opponent is doing. It's Fake Out from Mr. Mime, which is really awkward because it just choice locked itself into that, but we'll see what they're cooking. But that just does very little damage to Dugong, and there was no move coming from the slot anyway. As Latios throws an Ice Beam into Noivern, and it does 0 to 5% to Dugong. We cannot even confirm that that Ice Beam did any damage. Dugong, of course, resists Ice, double resists Ice. Both of its types resist Ice, and it gets Thick Fat, which gives it yet another resistance to Ice on top. I don't know if it's running Thick Fat in this matchup. None of its abilities seem super useful, though. Maybe you do run Thick Fat just to cover for something like that, but yeah, unclear whether that did any damage. It says at least 0.1 here, so okay. Mr. Mime choice locked into Fake Out, pretty much forced to switch out. We see Mischievous come in as Dugong throws its own Fake Out into Latios. Okay, and Pikachu just goes for Wild Charge into the Mr. Mime slot, probably trying to catch Gyarados coming in. Well, no, Gyarados is not going to switch in, but covering for something like that. No, I'm being silly. Wild Charge is probably just his best attack, and it does do a lot of damage to Flutter Mane. Mischievous. Does do a lot of damage to Mischievous. I mean, they had to know that Mr. Mime was switching out. And the opponent has 2 electric resists, one of which is already on the field. So yeah, Wild Charge was just going to do a lot of damage to something. Now Pikachu will switch out to Noivern. We see a Kasib Berry on Mischievous. So that's the Ghost Resist Berry, I think. So now they know that that's there to cover for a Shadow Ball from Mega Gengar. Noivern switches in on a Dragon Pulse, but it shows the Haban Berry. Still takes about half, but that's a lot better than just being knocked out, as Mischievous shows a Destiny Bond. Okay. Dugong's Brine targets Mischievous. Brine, of course, unique attack. I don't know if they've ever made any other one like it in the whole series, but it does extra damage if the opponent is below half HP. So Dugong making sure to get that KO, trading itself for Mischievous in the process. I don't know how Genie Incarnate should feel about that trade, honestly. Mischievous has genuinely been one of the Marshadows' best Pokemon throughout the season. But Dugong is pretty valuable here for being able to just sit on the field for a while against stuff like Latios, so I do think it's probably a favorable trade for the Marshadows. Yeah, for the Marshadows. I think Dugong was probably more valuable there, but Mischievous has been so good all season, but who knows? So who knows? Mr. Mime comes in. There's no Tailwind up, so Noivern's still vulnerable to a possible Scarf Dazzling Gleam. Pikachu Bell is back. Noivern protecting, avoiding a Psyshock. Maybe the Marshadows not so eager to lock into Dazzling Gleam when Gengar could be in the back, but also they just don't have to here because the Psyshock should do plenty to Noivern, and we see Latios take out Pikachu with a Dragon Pulse. Pikachu Bell did not show Fake Out, right? Okay. Does Cosplay Pikachu even get Fake Out? I'm not sure it does, because you probably can't get Egg moves on it, right? I never thought about that until now, but actually it probably doesn't. I don't know my Cosplay Pikachu. If I face Genie Incarnate in the final, I'll find out what that thing can do. Anyway, Mega Gengar is the last Pokemon here. It doesn't love facing a Choice Scarf Mr. Mime locked into Psyshock, but let's see what they come up with. Gengar will Mega Evolve and Protect. Will Noivern get a chance to throw off a Tailwind? It does. Latios attacks the Gengar slot, so Mr. Mime attacks the Gengar slot, so Noivern outspeeds Latios, does get the Tailwind up, gets knocked out in the process, but now Gengar is alone, and Mr. Mime takes a Shadow Ball, throws back a Psyshock, one-shots Gengar. That was a great Mr. Mime game right there. They didn't even have the Fling Tech, but Mr. Mime, I mean, it didn't really do any significant damage until it one-shot Gengar, but that already is a big deal, and Mr. Mime was just putting out pressure. After it switched out, after locking itself with a Fake Out and then came back in, it just put out so much pressure. Genie Incarnate couldn't get through. I would imagine Gengar probably loses to Latios even if it knocks out Mr. Mime there, but also Mr. Mime took a Shadow Ball from Mega Gengar, so gets to be the hero of this game. Well, let's see what happens now in Game 2. Dugong and Crocodile leading against Gyarados this time in Rotom. The classic Draft League move of... We didn't see their last Pokemon in Game 1, right? So we don't know for sure that they're leading with the 2 they didn't bring last time. I don't think we saw what the last one in the back was, but they're probably doing the classic Draft League move. But it's Dugong and Crocodile on the other side. Intimidates both ways. As Crocodile switches out to Tangrowth, Gyarados will Mega Evolve. and go straight for a Dragon Dance, getting rid of the Intimidate drop and getting the +1 speed. As Rotom sets Reflect, Dugong throws off an Icy Wind, getting rid of the entirety of the Dragon Dance boost on Gyarados. Gyarados is just back at neutral now. I mean, that's still beneficial after it took an Intimidate. Rotom is speed dropped. Gyarados protects. You have to imagine Tangrowth is the answer they brought for Mega Gyarados. So yeah, we'll see what it does, but Gyarados just protecting here. Rotom will get speed dropped and chipped some more by Icy Wind, and Seed Bomb into Gyarados, but it hits a Protect. Dugong taking a Leaf Storm from Rotom. Not super well, but taking it, and Rotom lowers its own stats there. Now Dugong switches back out to Crocodile. Crocodile takes a Crunch, no problem. Tangrowth misses a Sleep Powder into Gyarados and gets Volt Switched by Rotom, and the Volt Switch does about a third because it crits, so that crit could be pretty significant later, we'll see. Now we've seen all the Pokemon for the Marshadows show up as Metagross is here. Of course, Tangrowth has Regenerator, so if it gets a chance to switch out, that could offset the crit, but it's still not great for Genie Incarnate if it gets pressured to do that when it otherwise wouldn't, right? And then, yeah, they did also miss the Sleep Powder miss. They did also miss the Sleep Powder miss. The Sleep Powder missed. That's pretty rough for Genie Incarnate as well. Gyarados will switch out to Rotom here. Metagross came in at some point. Crocodile protects, avoiding an Ice Punch, as Metagross gets hit with a Sleep Powder this time. Now Gengar comes in on a Leaf Storm. That did so much damage. Wow, shows how bulky Dugong is, I guess, that it didn't get knocked out when this did half to Gengar into a resistance. Rotom will get weakened again. Choiced Rotom? Probably. No, definitely not, because it switched. We saw it switch moves, and it used Reflect. It's not choiced, it just hits that hard, I guess. Metagross is asleep, and takes a knockoff, which activates his weakness policy, so that's probably not what Genie Incarnate wanted to see either. That's kind of awkward for them, but of course Gengar can threaten Metagross here, can trap it and Shadow Ball. And if Metagross switches out before Gengar Mega Evolves to avoid getting trapped, it gives up the weakness policy boost. So it's not that devastating for Genie Incarnate, but that's probably not what they wanted to see there. Also, Metagross is asleep, so might all be moot. But Metagross wakes up here. It almost had a chance to Bullet Punch Gengar, but Tangrowth being on the field means it could redirect a Bullet Punch. Rage Powder does redirect a Bullet Punch into Tangrowth, activating a Citrus Berry. So Gengar will get a chance to Shadow Ball Metagross. So yeah, Metagross doesn't get to do too terribly much with the weakness policy. It did at least get rid of the Tangrowth Berry a little earlier than might have been done otherwise. Rotom sets a Light Screen. Gyarados is back. Tangrowth switching out to Crocodile will intimidate the Gyarados. Gengar just throws an Energy Ball into Gyarados, does some decent damage, but less than half, notably, into the Light Screen. And Crocodile takes a -1 Waterfall, as Gengar takes a -2 Volt Switch. Mr. Mime is in now. Gengar protecting. Avoiding a Scarf Psyshock as Gyarados Waterfall takes out Crocodile. So, I mean, the Marshadows have found some offensive pressure again. The Psyshock Scarf Mr. Mime definitely looks like a threat, but we'll see if it can break through Tangrowth, I guess. Tangrowth is back. Definitely has Regenerator, judging by its HP. It'll Rage Powder, redirect the Psyshock away from Gengar. Gengar free to Shadow Ball Mr. Mime. This time it crits. So even though it didn't one-shot Mr. Mime in Game 1, and Light Screen has gone up this time, so it should do even less than before, no problem if you just crit your opponents. I guess that's the lesson of this week. People have learned that one all over the league. Mr. Mime is gone. There goes that pressure. Gyarados, though, getting to +1 speed with the Dragon Dance. Rotom is back to hit extremely hard. Crunch into Tangrowth doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does get the defense drop. Gengar protects around a Leaf Storm. Seed Bomb takes out Gyarados. There's no Reflect on the field. That already disappeared, so... Gyarados got a decent crunch into Tangrowth there, but yeah, Tangrowth, pretty good answer to Mega Gyarados. Just a very tanky grass type, able to take a hit and threaten it back. And now we get Shadow Ball into Rotom. Leaf Storm will take out Gengar. Tangrowth will get the last KO with Knockoff. They still have Dugong in the back as well, so, you know, Dugong was here too. I mean, Dugong has been actually a pretty useful participant in this set, because it threatens Latios, and it can clearly take a special hit very, very well, and it gives him some speed control too. So I shouldn't make fun of Dugong. Dugong's actually been pretty valuable. Let's see how valuable it can be in Game 3. Tangrowth leads again, with Crocodile. They have not turned on each other. Tangrowth leads with Crocodile against Mr. Mime and Metagross. The Intimidate only goes into Mr. Mime thanks to Clear Body. And it's the Fling Tech. It's just into Metagross this time. Mr. Mime getting rid of his Choice Scarf. Kind of interesting, actually, because the Scarf Mr. Mime has been one of the clearest threats from the Marshadows through both games so far. It's a lot less scary for Mega Gengar if the Mr. Mime doesn't have its Scarf, but they do go for the Fling Tech there. They get Metagross to +2. If they can break through Tangrowth here and set up for Mega Gyarados in the back, that could be pretty good for the Marshadows and worth getting rid of the fast Mime. But Tangrowth, so very bulky, takes the +2 Meteor Mash, eats his Citrus Berry. Hits Sleep Powder into Mr. Mime. That's a little bit awkward that it's Mr. Mime and not Metagross. I guess Mr. Mime being so threatening in the first two games kind of pays off for the Marshadows here, as that is the target that Tangrowth prioritizes, and not the Metagross, which is still able to be a giant threat now, although it's under some pressure from Crocodile at least. And if Mega Gengar comes in, they could redirect a Bullet Punch like they did in Game 2, but Tangrowth is actually clicking Rage Powder here, so if the Marshadows can get rid of Tangrowth with another Meteor Mash or something, then they can definitely threaten Gengar after this. I would think, but let's see. Mr. Mime will stay asleep. It's Earthquake from Crocodile. Doesn't get a KO, but does a lot of damage to both opponents. We see Life Orb on Crocodile. We do see Tangrowth taken out by a Meteor Mash. So Metagross could threaten this Gengar that's come in, but if Gengar protects and Crocodile Earthquakes, I don't know what Metagross does about that. They'll get Gyarados in here and intimidate Crocodile, but Metagross is definitely in Earthquake range. Gyarados won't take damage from it. The Bullet Punch goes into Crocodile. It doesn't KO. Crocodile is too healthy. And Gengar didn't protect. Maybe they called that Metagross would target the Crocodile there, because I thought the Protect on Gengar felt pretty obvious. Maybe Genie Incarnate agreed. That's why Gengar just went for the attack into Metagross, knocking it out with a Shadow Ball, freeing Crocodile to click Knockoff into Gyarados. Of course, Gyarados is holding its Mega Stone, so its item can't be knocked off, and I think also Knockoff doesn't get the damage boost, and it's -1, but it's some chip. We see Latios now for the Marshadows. Crocodile switches out to Dugong. Gyarados will Mega Evolve. Gengar just protecting, avoiding a Psyshock from Latios, as Dugong takes a crunch from Gyarados pretty well. Once again, Dugong proving to be a genuine tanky threat. It'll fake out Latios here to force a flinch, as Gengar is free then to take out Gyarados with an Energy Ball. No Light Screen to protect the Gyarados from that this time. Latios flinches. Mr. Mime is here, but it's asleep, and it doesn't have its Scarf. Gengar protects around a Psyshock. Mr. Mime stays asleep. Dugong Icy Wind will knock out Mr. Mime and get a speed drop on Latios. And Gengar now free to Shadow Ball Latios for the win. So that was a... Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some trade-offs in that game plan from the Marshadows, but the Metagross was a giant threat, for sure. And if they could set up for a Gyarados endgame, then that could have been very solid for them. I get what they were going for there. But Genie Incarnate just had too much pressure with the Crocodile. The Tangrowth was a hero this set for sure, showing how tanky that Pokemon can be. Dugong showed similar things. And then Mega Gengar able to clean up when it was finally not threatened by that fast Psyshock. Genie Incarnate get to move on. Finally, we have... Hey, it's the last match of the week and the one that will determine my next opponent. The Sinister Hand versus the Yosemite Yolteons. I'm going to try not to rush this, but I actually have to go soon. That toxic Bois set really filled some time. All right, but let's see. The Sinister Hand have their usual mix of strong, tanky Pokemon. Just like a bunch of the best Pokemon you could want, with some great supports in Dusclops and Clefable, able to give them some redirection, maybe some Trick Room. I mean, I don't know what I can say. These are both well-rounded teams that we've been watching all season. They both have a bunch of varied and powerful threats. I'm not even trying to rush for time. I just don't think there's much to say here, except let's jump in and watch what happens. I guess keep an eye on Breloom. Breloom could be interesting into some of the best Pokemon for the Sinister Hand, but it's also massively threatened by Chandelure and, to a lesser extent, Clefable. The Mega Gengar trapping things and removing them could be interesting, although, of course, it can't trap Chandelure or Dusclops. Anyway, Dusclops leads with Clefable against Breloom and Gyarados. Okay. Intimidate's probably not that important here. We see Expert Belt on Breloom and Safety Goggles on Gyarados. Safety Goggles on Gyarados. Covering for the Venonat that they didn't bring, I guess. Interesting. Okay, Clefable protects. And so does Dusclops. Scouting what the opponent will do, I guess. We see Gyarados Iron Head into Clefable. Another thing that I didn't really call out about the Yolteons is a lot of these Pokemon get a lot of interesting coverage options. Especially Gyarados, but Hydreigon too. So, okay, Iron Head confirmed. Makes sense into tanky redirecting Fairy. Dusclops avoids a Spore. We see Flame Orb on the Clefable. Interesting. So that'll protect it from Spore. It won't take burn damage if it has Magic Guard, which clearly it does. And it could... Wait, did we see them do something like this before this season? I think we did. It might even have been against me, but it was a while ago. I don't remember. Is it like switcheroo Clefable to give the Flame Orb to an opponent and burn them? Well, I guess we'll find out. We see Follow Me this turn. Gyarados sets up a Dragon Dance. Okay, but yeah, I guess the biggest thing is it just with Follow Me and Clefable burning itself and then not taking damage, so you don't even have the drawback. They can just always redirect a Spore into an immunity. I guess that's a justification enough for Flame Orb Clefable. Pretty cool attack. Dusclops gets a free Trick Room here. The Spore unable to shut it down thanks to that Clefable tech. We see protects on both sides, protects from both Pokemon on the Yolteon side here. They avoided Dusclops Rock Slide and a Moonblast into Breloom. Now Breloom switches out to Gardevoir. Copies Frisk, so we'll get to see Eviolite Dusclops and Flame Orb Clefable, but we pretty well knew already. Rock Slide not doing too much damage. It's coming from -1 Dusclops. The Moonblast does some more to Gardevoir. Actually, Gardevoir took a fair bit of damage between those two attacks, and Gyarados flinched thanks to the Rock Slides. The Rock Slide does pay off for the Sinister Hand here, but they're not really making the most of their Trick Room. We'll see if that backfires on them at all. Clefable is doing some notable damage, but Dusclops isn't really, so I do kind of question how worthwhile the flinches are here. The Yolteons now get to protect both Pokemon on the second last turn of Trick Room. And then what? Another Rock Slide. I mean, Gardevoir will drop to a Moonblast here, except they don't go for it. They go for Trick to give the Flame Orb to Gyarados. Okay. Take the safety goggles. Clefable now immune to Spore twice over, just to be safe, I guess. But yeah, Gyarados will get burned. First, they'll get a big Iron Head into Clefable for a bunch of damage before the burn kicks in. Now Clefable protects, avoids another Iron Head that surely would KO. Moonblast crits the Dusclops. This really is a week of crits, but it only does like a third with a crit. Pretty sad for Gardevoir. And Gardevoir gets taunted. So now Gardevoir, if Gardevoir has a way to disrupt a Trick Room game plan, that'll be shut down. But again, they didn't really do all that much with the Trick Room before. I mean, I guess they wore the opponent down some with some steady damage, and they didn't lose much in the process, so they can go for it again. And if the Yolteons knock out Clefable now, then the Sinister Hand can get an attacker in. So setting up Trick Room again could still be valuable. We see Follow Me, redirecting an Iron Head. Clefable's knocked out. Dusclops takes more than I expected from a Moonblast. These rolls must be super weird, because that didn't do very much less than the crit on the previous turn. I don't know what's going on there, but okay. Dusclops gets Trick Room back up. And now Tyranitar is in. There's their attacker. That's a more serious Rock Slide, especially when it Mega Evolves. Dusclops gets the Rock Slide off first. I was wondering why that did so little damage. I saw the Tyranitar Mega Evolve, and I was bracing myself, and I saw a Rock Slide. And I forgot that, of course, it would be the Dusclops one. So I was mind blown for a second when I saw how little that did. But, of course, now Tyranitar gets the KOs. But the Yolteons have Breloom in the back. They can threaten Tyranitar with Fighting Stab, maybe Mach Punch. And they also have Hydreigon. Tyranitar will switch out. Getting away from that. Chandelure is their last Pokemon. Makes sense because it covers Breloom, but it is at the same time kind of interesting to bring against Hydreigon. Not sure what's going to happen here. The Yolteon is just protecting through the Trick Room so far, though. Dusclops taunting Breloom, looking to shut down the Spore option, probably. Breloom actually just goes for a double protect. Gets crit by Dusclops Rock Slide, but I barely noticed. More importantly, Heat Wave from Chandelure takes out the Breloom and burns Hydreigon. That's less important, but it's a thing that happened. Hydreigon will take out Chandelure with a Dark Pulse, and it'll show a Life Orb, but I mean, it's getting chipped down by Life Orb, Sand, and Burn. And I just don't know how it beats Mega Tyranitar. Focus Blast crit. Well, first it'll protect to get out of the Trick Room, avoiding a taunt in the process. But it's still going to take Burn and Sand damage, so that's kind of an uncomfy protect. Hydreigon already in the red. No Focus Blast. It has Earth Power. With that Earth Power damage, I feel like Focus Blast might have KO'd. I don't know my calcs, but it's got significantly higher base power, and it's super effective and extra time. But they don't have it, clearly. The Earth Power takes out the Tyranitar. I don't know if Hydreigon was beating Dusclops anyway. Maybe it was, though. I don't know. Hydreigon is taking passive damage so quickly. I mean, it'll get better with the Sand gone. I think if Hydreigon had wiped out Tyranitar with a Focus Blast, we might have gotten a 0-0 result to this game. If Hydreigon's taken out by its own Life Orb, who wins that? I think the Yolteons would win that, but I'm not certain I remember correctly. In any case, the Sinister Hand played kind of a slow, grindy game plan here, but it worked out for them, and they have gotten the win. Dusclops sitting on the field the whole time. Great Clefable tech. Chandelure getting the key KO on Breloom, and so Tyrant are able to close things out. Let's see if they can do it again. Clefable leads with Dusclops, same Pokemon, different order, against Gengar and Gyarados. So now Mega Gengar is a threat to trap Clefable. It can't trap Dusclops, but it can also threaten Dusclops with Taunt or just offense. But it's susceptible to Follow Me, so actually the Clefable still makes things tricky. Gengarite on Gengar, obviously we know. They have to run that. It Mega Evolves here. There is the Follow Me. Redirecting a Shadow Ball. Clefable takes a lot of damage, but... well, it takes about half, which is a lot of damage. I mean, it doesn't take another Shadow Ball, but it's not KO'd. Gyarados going for a Dragon Dance here. But they've let Clefable survive turn 1. We'll see how that goes for them. When the Trick Room goes back up, Clefable gets his burn. Very funny. Genuinely cool attack against the Breloom. The Yolteons protect both Pokemon to get through this turn, so we're back to this. Just as I said, I had to get through this fairly quickly. We're back to the slow, grindy plans here. Rock Slide, Trick into Gyarados. Gyarados protected last turn, but this turn it will take the Flame Orb. But I mean, it's still threatening Clefable with that +1 Iron Head, I would think. But the Yolteon's just protecting here. Oh, I didn't even catch that both Pokemon flinched. I saw the bruh in the chat and wondered what that was reacting to. I didn't catch that both of these Pokemon flinched last turn. Unfortunate for the Yolteons. Fortunate for the Sinister Hand, who are definitely big Rock Slide fans. But now the Yolteons protect again. The Trick Room turns are almost done. There's one more left. Rock Slide comes out first. We'll get a double flinch again. Gyarados takes a Moonblast. Nope. Gengar Shadow Ball crits the Dusclops. Everybody's critting everybody this week, but Dusclops does hold on. Gyarados flinches. Oh, okay. What a funny set of games. Dusclops will protect here. Trick Room is over. Clefable will follow me. Takes a burned +1 Iron Head, but Gengar follows up with a Shadow Ball and knocks Clefable out. Gyarados will feint to burn damage here, but the Yolteons are, I mean, they can pretty freely deny another Trick Room, so that much is good for them. And Breloom, though, gets intimidated by the Mawile. That part's a little bit awkward for the Yolteons. Gengar protects, so does Mawile. It doesn't Mega Evolve. Breloom Bullet Seed takes out the Dusclops, so no more Trick Room, as Mawile and Suicune are the last two Pokemon for the Sinister Hand. Mawile Mega Evolve here. Take a bunch of damage from Shadow Ball, but then Suicune goes next. Ice Beam does like 85% to Breloom, but that's not 100%. Breloom holds on, goes for a Bullet Seed into Suicune. There is no loaded dice in this generation. There are no loaded dice. I don't know. But I can't remember whether we saw Breloom's item already. We've seen 2 hits. Let's see if it gets more. 3, 4. Takes out the Suicune with 1 Bullet Seed, and so Mawile's alone now. It will knock out Gengar with an Iron Head, but it's up against Breloom and Hydreigon. And Mach Punch. Mawile. Oh. Did Mawile have a chance here? No, I don't think so. No, because Breloom is faster. That was confirmed by them both going for +1 priority there. So Hydreigon's faster than Mawile too, right? Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Mawile just always drops to this Earth Power. If Mawile were faster than Hydreigon, then maybe it could one-shot with a Play Rough, and then... but then Breloom could just put it to sleep with Spore and guaranteed win the game if they're not sure about the Mach Punch damage, but it's moot anyway because Mawile's slower than Hydreigon. It was just going to trying to snipe a KO on Breloom with Sucker Punch in a game that was definitely lost, but it doesn't even get to do that, and Hydreigon gets to close this one out this time. And so let's see... The Yolteons found a way through that slow, grindy, rock-sliding, Sinister Hand game plan, even with the double flinch on that one turn. And I don't know what's going to happen in Game 3, but this is the last game of the Octofinals, so let's find out. Chandelure and Clefable. No Dusclops this time. It's Chandelure and Clefable against same lead from the Yolteons, Gengar and Gyarados. Gengar Mega Evolving turn 1. We see Follow Me from Clefable, redirecting a Shadow Ball. Taking a bunch of damage, but Chandelure now free to attack Gengar if it wants. Gyarados not Dragon Dancing this time, just goes straight for the Iron Head, so they do take out the Clefable turn 1. Chandelure sets Trick Room. So now, the Sinister Hand did no damage turn 1, but they have 2 giant offensive threats on the field in Trick Room, which is probably was ideal for them all along. I feel like they were taking a slower approach to try to position the same kind of thing in the earlier games, but now... it's turn 2, or it's about to be, and they just have Tyranitar and Chandelure putting out a lot of pressure. And Tyranitar has a lot of trouble dealing with Breloom, but Chandelure can just knock that out, so looks pretty good for them. We know the Yolteons will spam Protect to get through the Trick Room turns, so that will make things trickier for the Sinister hand, but let's see if the Yolteons can hold on well enough. They do protect both their Pokemon, as we see Chandelure go for a Shadow Ball into Gengar. Sand Chip all around. Gyarados now switches out to Breloom. If there's no Heat Wave, then that's pretty good switch in for Breloom, and it is just another Shadow Ball into the Gengar slot, so they also switch Hydreigon into that. Resist the Shadow Ball, no problem. Breloom will resist a Rock Slide from Tyranitar, so Breloom has managed to get in safely as the Sinister hand. Well, let's see. Yeah, okay, it is Rock Slide from Tyranitar. I guess I should have waited to confirm that. The Hydreigon took a lot of damage coming in, but the Yolteons have managed to get Breloom in safely as the Sinister hand repeated their play there. Mega Tyranitar now pressured by Breloom, switches out to Suicune, which does its own kind of pressure, and now we see Hydreigon switch right back out to Gyarados. Breloom just protecting here, playing it patiently, I guess. The Trick Room's almost gone. Gyarados will take a Heat Wave. Breloom now switches out to Gengar. The Sinister hand have a chance to take out the Gengar here before the Trick Room ends, but okay, alright. I mean, they get some chip with the Chandelure Heat Wave. That's pretty respectable damage, and then they set up their other speed control option, Tailwind with the Suicune. Clicking Tailwind on the last turn of Trick Room means they go from having the speed advantage to immediately still continuing to have the speed advantage. So there's still a lot of offensive pressure here. Chandelure takes a lot of damage from the Gyarados, left at approximately 6% HP, but it survives. Does it survive the sand damage? I don't think it took sand damage, so I guess it's safety goggles Chandelure, and I just didn't notice until now. But yeah, Suicune now going first in the Tailwind. Ice Beam chips the Gyarados. Probably doesn't do the damage they wanted as Heat Wave fails to get a KO. Downside of safety goggles Chandelure, I guess. Without an offensive item, it doesn't get that little bit of extra damage to knock these things out. Not even Gengar. And so the Yolteons will get a chance to hit back. Thunderbolt into Suicune does some decent damage. Waterfall into Chandelure knocks it out. The Sand ends just in time to not KO the Gengar. But now Tyranitar is back. It's still threatening a big Rock Slide with 2 more turns of Tailwind. And it does now have the Sand Chip into Gengar again, so Gengar can't just protect around it. But if Breloom can get on the field again, it's a little bit tricky with Suicune throwing Ice Beams around, but Breloom could be a giant threat now that Clefable and Chandelure are both gone. Gyarados protects. Gengar, guess, doesn't see any point in protecting. He just gets knocked out by a Rock Slide before it can do anything. Goggles Gyarados also not taking sand damage. Now they get Hydreigon in. On the last turn of Tailwind, they're preserving the Breloom in the back. Hydreigon will protect. Gyarados will get knocked out by a Rock Slide, but that gets Breloom in for free just as the Tailwind ends, just as the Yolteons wanted to position it. And they don't have to worry about their Bullet Seed luck, because Suicune is so low after that Thunderbolt. Actually, they don't Bullet Seed Suicune. They Mach Punch Tyranitar. I thought for sure they were going to Bullet Seed Suicune there. But maybe they just know that they knock it out with Hydreigon, so they don't have to. Yeah, okay, that is what it is. Hydreigon, Dragon Pulse takes out the Suicune. Nice safe move. Dragon Pulse, not even any chance of missing. And Breloom is free to clean up. Mega Tyranitar has, throughout some of the weeks of this season, played around Fighting-type damage pretty effectively, but finally, it faces down a 40 base power Mach Punch, I guess higher with Technician, and just gets one shot. The Fighting types finally broke through. And so yeah, the Yolteons played that pretty smoothly in the end there. Their Pokemon were just tanky enough to get rid of the Chandelure, which created an opening for Breloom to win the game. And then they made the right protects and the right sacrifices to get out of the Tailwind, so Breloom could come in at just the right time. Hydreigon outspeeding Suicune was also pretty big there. So they played that one super well, and they take a well-deserved win, and hopefully their last one of the season, because their next opponent is the Halifax Masquerade Men. So hopefully they won't be winning anymore. But we'll just have to find out next week. We are now in the quarterfinals. Out of 24 teams that originally entered this season, only 8 now remain. And yeah, come back next week to see what happens next. That's all I got.